Go Loud presents the Talking Bollox podcast.
What you waiting for? Put your back in it. Just a little more. Throw your weight in it now. Tell your body you're ten. Walk it hard and long. When you finish that,
The hip knocker.
go down, go down, go down. Come up, come up.
Boom, here we are, episode 31, Talking Bollox podcast. It's me, COB,
It's me, Terry Flower.
and today we're joined by
Lynn Ruane.
Senator Lynn Ruane.
Senator Ruane.
Senator
Ruane.
Senator Ruane. All right.
How's things, Lynn?
Grand, good.
Yeah, all good?
Yeah,
Show
all
the
good.
camera your chain there off the back.
There we go, yeah.
Zoom in on that chain there, Jamie. That show me out.
Yeah, that's by Aoife Dooley. It's like my favourite word. Teabag. But you have to say it like right from the pit of your
Yeah,
stomach. Like,
dig her out. Gay bag. Yeah, gay bag. Turn in there.
Love it.
Right, before we kick off, a few things to mention. So, a lot of people have been texting us about zingers and stuff like that, and they've only recently jumped onto the podcast, and they love seeing us, and they've only, they kind of jumped in halfway through. So, this will be our 34th episode. So, to anyone who kind of got on in the last few weeks, I'd advise you to go back and listen from episode 1, not just because of the structure of the podcast, but you'll see how far we've grown. Like, we started with talking into a phone at the kitchen table, and now here we are. We've gone through barbershops, beauty salons, hair salons. I counted it today.
Kitchens.
5 kitchens. 5 kitchens. My gaff, Terrence's gaff, Terrence's ma's gaff, Carly's gaff, Christy Dignam's gaff, a community centre. And I think that's it. Yeah. I didn't miss a spot there, no?
No, not that
and
I
you
can think
actually
of.
just belong in a lane.
Yeah, who's the lane? Give us a number. No, but go back and listen. So you'll hear when we touch on jokes, we touch on previous stories, previous guests, the zingers as well. It's good because people keep texting us previous singers over and over again. So if you can go back and listen to this from the start, and then in the more recent episodes, you'll hear us plugged on Go Loud. So download the Go Loud app. It's available on iOS and Android as well. You'll see us on YouTube. And I think that's basically it.
And then Spotify and YouTube, so.
Yeah, so the thing is with Spotify and YouTube, to keep us trending in the charts, listen to us on Spotify, listen to us on Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your normal podcast. And then if you want, listen to or watch us on YouTube then for the reaction. So we don't want to take away from the platform listens that we usually had, because it is all based off charts. So we will drop down the charts, although we still have the numbers on YouTube. So that'll give us a bit of a dig out.
And don't forget to leave a review on Apple Podcast.
Yeah, follow us on wherever you listen to your podcast. Subscribe to us on the YouTube channel because it pushes us up as well. And yeah, sorry about that.
Boom!
Uncanny
Done and
bit of
dusted.
promo there.
Yeah, so that's that boxed off anyways, yeah? So we're going to jump into the zingers from last week, Lynn, yeah? Right? Did you ever do a skydive or a bungee jump?
I've done both.
Oh, have you? Which was
have.
worse?
Dangerous woman.
So the skydive was amazing because I was in South Africa and it was over Robben Island where Nelson Mandela, so it's kind of in
Yeah.
the background there. So the scenery was amazing, and I seen my shadow in a fucking cloud, and that was the most surreal awareness philosophical thing. I was like, oh, that is mental, right?
Yeah.
But then the bungee jump I found a bit hard, and I look back on the photo of it because you have to decide to let
jump,
yourself
yeah.
fall, and there's something really resistant about that, more so than even the plane. So I think I would do a bungee jump every day of the week.
Over the
sorry,
skydive?
I would do a skydive
Yeah.
every day of the week over a bungee jump.
Where'd you do the bungee jump?
In Cree. I was probably hungover. I was
You were on the verge of jumping anyways.
You need to jump from
So
something.
the picture actually, the way it looks is I just kind of go like that. There's no even like dive out. It was kind of like, all right.
A lot of people text us though and said the same thing what Lynn has said. It's
Yeah.
easier to do a skydive than a bungee.
There's something resistant, I think, in the human nature to make that jump yourself rather than being actually strapped to someone that's pulling you out.
That's why I
like,
think
do you
it's
know what
good
I mean?
about the skydive. You don't have to make that choice.
Yeah.
Someone's pushing you out, kind of. But with the bungee jump, it's like you probably would be better off if you were standing there and someone pushed you.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. But skydive, 85% of people said they'd rather do a skydive, and 15% said a bungee jump, yeah? So that's that one boxed off.
I think we're going to have to get you to do both as well, Terence.
No, I will, me bollocks.
Yeah, no, we're going to have to.
Not a hope. Do you brush your teeth with hot water? I said hot water, right? I put it in as hot water. I should have said warm water, right?
Okay.
Do you brush your teeth with warm water or cold water?
Cold water.
Yeah.
Yeah, so do I, yeah. But the amount of people... See, I said hot water, my next thing. If I had said warm water, that would have been higher, I reckon. Do you know what I mean?
I'd class it like it's either cold or it's not. Like it's either
Yeah.
cold and then it's
Yeah, the
warm.
variations of warmth I don't think matter.
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
not
yeah.
cold.
Like you could have a warm shower. Like warm shower is still hot to me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
It's not
yeah.
cold.
For some reason, I always thought that warmer water wasn't as clean as the cold water. I don't know where that came from in my head. It must have been
Yeah.
there since I was a kid. Like that hot water is not drinkable straight from the tap unless you boil it, and cold water is. I don't think any of that's true, but
Yeah.
that's what was in
In
my
your
head.
psyche,
Yeah.
that's what you're
Yeah.
thinking. Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyways, hot water 11%, cold water 89%.
Yeah, and a lot of the comments on that are saying name and shame and whoever voted hot
my
water.
God, there was murder over it, there was. But anyways, that's the thing from last week boxed off. We forgot Yui's one.
Yeah, but in fairness, I don't even know what Yui's was. I don't think Yui knew what Yui's was. It says, is it a BAP or, and then he gave about 4 other answers.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I don't know what he said. I
Is
was
it,
like,
oh yeah, it was like as in a
Bap or
bread roll,
barn
like,
Yeah.
cake or something. He
or
said.
a barn cake,
and then
or,
it was like a bone, and then
or
it
a
was like,
blah.
Yeah,
Did he
was
say
going-
blah?
He didn't stop.
He said loads of things, yeah.
Yeah.
But what's your thing of it this week?
So my thing of it this week, it kind of touched on with last week. So we told a story about the ice cream man, and then it clicked with me then, and I've seen a lot of comments about it. So do you call it an ice cream man or a corner man?
Corner.
Yeah,
Like
corner
that
man.
sounds fucking mental.
Don't say you never heard of it.
I never heard someone
Fuck
call
off.
it
Did you not, Lynn?
a corner man.
A corner man, yeah.
No.
You know what I'm talking
I
about.
call it a corner man, yeah.
Yeah.
No, sounds like the name of a
You're not
porn
having that,
movie
you're
or
not.
something.
She fuming at
No,
the end.
no.
Sorry about
Ice
that,
cream
Lynn.
man.
Yeah, but the corner, I don't know where I'd imagine it has
Corner
to originate from.
sounds very posh.
Is it an, I was going to
cornetto.
say, is it an inner city thing then?
Wouldn't have thought so. When I heard you, actually, because I listened and I was like, corner.
Yeah.
Do you want to corner? I don't English.
Yeah, but like,
Well, of course it sounds English. I just said it in English.
it's not a posh word because it's a corner.
Yeah.
A corner, you know what I mean? C-O-R-N-E-T.
Sounds like a sex worker. A corner. Man.
I don't know, but I think it comes from cornetto, I'd imagine.
No, I think the
Cornet.
actual thing like that it's in is called a corner. The
The
wafer.
cone.
Yeah.
The wipe, yeah, that's
think
what
it's
I
the
would have
original
said,
name
but
of the
then
corner.
I don't know. I'm just trying.
Yeah.
You put me on the spot and I'm panicking
His
now.
nerves
Yeah.
are going
Yeah,
sitting
yeah.
there. Look at him.
Bleeding like Freddie Roach sitting here twitching and all. Fucking hell. So, corner man or an ice cream man, that's where I'm going with.
That's Calvin's one boxed
Yeah,
off. That'll
boxed
be
off,
out.
yeah.
Lynn, you have a couple of
I've
singers,
three.
don't you? Oh, how's
Three
with them?
singers, right? So one of them just happened. Like this is the times I think of singers, which is funny, right? So I was eating my Sunday dinner a few weeks ago, right? And I was like, there's two type of people when they're eating a roast.
Right.
Ones that eat their meat and their veg at the same time, like coordinate between the two, and then there's the ones that eat all their mash and veg and leave their meat to last.
Yeah.
Is that a thing?
It
I
is a
think it
thing.
is, yeah.
It is a thing.
Right.
Definitely
I,
a thing.
I definitely do that. I
Yeah.
eat all the veg and then the meat comes
And then
last.
the meat.
Yeah, so do I, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a really
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a good singer. Look
There's
at
one,
that.
right? The other two are for the women, right?
There we
One
go.
of them is, right, when you used to go drinking in the park when you were younger, did you wear spare socks in case you needed to have a wee?
Oh, right. Strategy.
Or did you just have a shake? I wore spare socks.
Well, she was on the ball with it anyway.
Would you not just bring tissue with you?
No, because it'd be in your pockets and, do you know what I mean? It'd be the summer, you might not want to wear anything with a pocket.
Not a handbag or anything on your
No.
list.
No, I was 12 in the 90s. Fucking handbag.
I just think there's
A bleeding
better ways
KDI
around
bag,
it.
not bleeding handbag.
I think there's better ways around it than wearing extra socks.
Yeah, a couple of suggestions there, yeah.
Party a newspaper or something, no?
And then the other one is, when you're going home after work, do you take your bra off in the car or when you get in the door?
What do you do?
Or else do you take your bra off as soon as you get home or leave your bra on all evening at home? Because
These
that's
are
just
very,
mad.
sexist.
They're very
singers.
sexist.
Yeah.
They're not sexist.
Well, I don't wear a bra. Terence looks like he could do with a bra.
I'm at the putting on it for the timber boys, yeah?
Yeah.
But,
So they're two for the girls,
right,
and then the other
the
one,
Sunday
the
dinner.
other one is gender neutral.
Yeah.
right, happy days. They'll be slapped up the weekend. There, Lynn's one's boxed off. My singer for the week, still struggling. Do you call it €20 or a score?
Let's go.
Yeah, a
Let's
score.
go. So Terence said this to me today, and he's like, "Oh, is this like an inner city thing? And I was like, no. And he goes, it's to do with drugs, isn't it? I was like, no, like score.
I thought it was like got a score bag.
Score
Do you know what I
block.
mean?
Yeah, but that's because it's worth
But
€20.
yeah,
The word
that's-
score,
the word score,
is an
yeah.
English word. It
Yeah.
means 20. So
Yeah.
Abraham Lincoln gave a famous speech
Let's
back
just
in the
start
day.
saying Garden Gate and all that.
Yeah.
God,
Or a bottle of water.
yeah. A little half Ozzy Osbourne. But,
Sorry about that. So that's from the School of Hard Knocks, from the actual School of History. Abraham Lincoln gave that speech, and Lynn, I'm sure you're aware about where he says 407 years ago. So it means
Right.
87. 407 years ago.
Yeah.
right.
So 4 score is 80, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it is a word for €20 in the English language.
But a knowledge dropped on us
Yeah,
again. The
there you
Calvin
go.
fella every single
I'm
week.
Truth bombs.
nearly sure it was given in a State of the Union speech address. Abraham Lincoln gave that, yeah.
Right,
Right, there
fresh
you
as a
go.
flower, boxed
Yeah.
off. And another quick one. Remember last week we were talking about a grushy or a gushy?
Yeah.
We got a message saying it's called a grushy for grab and rush.
But somebody came in and dropped another knowledge
A
bomb
little
on us.
bombshell on the show, Lynn.
It's actually, gushy is the term used for catching a fallen object in general. So what's not about money, not about whatever, but the catching of a falling object.
Now,
So what about this grab and rush thing? Because it makes sense now.
Now, that just sounds like you're bleeding, hitting the fucking bank on the weekend, doing a little bit of a bit of a grab and rush. Yeah.
she's right.
She has
Go
a
on in the
valid
PO
point.
there and we'll do a little grab and rush.
Over the counter like a rabbit.
But right, well there we are. That's them boxed off. And anyways, so few suggestions. Calvin, the Euros, talk to me about it.
Yeah, delighted.
Get up the Italians.
Yeah. Hit every local chipper. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
What's the ITICA, the Irish Traditional, no, ITCIA, is
How
it?
are you getting on
Irish
there,
Traditional
Calvin?
Chipper Italian Association or something
It's
like
an
that.
actual association.
Yeah, for Irish and Italian chippers. So the Italians won it, Forza Italia. We were talking about last week, is it okay to support England? And we were saying,
It is okay to support them. It's
Yeah.
not okay to support Declan Rice.
yeah, and
Because-
seeing Declan Rice crying is one of my favourite images this year.
Or 100%.
Do you know do you follow football, Lynn?
Yes.
You know quite well who Declan Rice
Yes.
is. Singing around the vein at the top of his lungs, pounding his chest,
Caption
kissing
him.
the
He has
bleeding breast.
an
and all.
Instagram picture up years ago captioned up the rap with.
Yeah, you know what I
and then
mean?
he's going around kissing the English back.
And he's sobbing, crying then because he lose. But what we said
No.
was, it's all right to support them. We wouldn't mind if they won, but it's the fans and the media and how they're portrayed. The fans are killing each other all day yesterday. There's
Yeah.
people in the pub since 6 in the morning on a Sunday punching each other around. There's a video of fans bunking into stadiums. And I've no problem with people bunking in. Done it many times
I
myself.
was going to say, I'm
But then there's
notorious
fans
for it.
punching people around for bunking in and all. Like, imagine seeing your dad there. The middle-aged men, like, punching fellas around for bunking into a stadium. Carry-ons like that. The racist abuse Rashford, Saka and Sancho were going to get for missing penalties. and
Fucking joke that is.
it's stomach turning, you know. So, I'm delighted Italy won for that.
Yeah.
So, yeah. That was that about the Euros.
Yeah, like I mean, I think it's hard. Like it's hard now to separate what's happened over the last few days, like football, from like decent human behaviour and respect and all of that kind of stuff. And I think the most disturbing piece is obviously the lads taking the penalties, like, and what came after that. And it's hard to even focus on just a game. Do you know what I mean? Like just it, like sportsmanship. Like I play football. My dad was a League of Ireland footballer and a ref until he was, you know, in his 50s, 60s, and he was a Leeds United supporter, so he knew all about sportsmanship and losing.
Yeah, say so.
But like, you know, he instilled in me a huge amount of sportsmanship, so I've always tried to remove the politics and stuff from sport, which so I found the last few days quite difficult actually to watch and even comment on. Like for me to not comment on like a Euros final was quite unusual, but I think you know, England, whatever about it, they are our neighbours, and there is ordinary people in England not engaging in any of that. It's like, you know, when you just generalise against the whole, like, and it happens to us so much. So if I'm not there and I don't know and I don't understand exactly, I tend to just try and sit back and just watch it for a moment, like, do you know what I mean? So I actually decided not to watch the match last night.
But you know, the sad thing about it is, because I text, like me and my mate were texting about the penalties, and when Rashford missed his penalty, I text him and I goes, I guarantee he'll have over 100,000 comments getting racially abused, because when United lost the Europa League final, he shared the next day he had like 40,000 comments in one day racially abusing him because he played bad. So like imagine he's at the missing a penalty in a final for his nation, and he gets racially abused over it. So like, you know, right up until the final, it was all like, we're all in this together. England, it's coming home. Well done, boys. And then he misses a penalty. Like, he didn't intentionally miss the fucking penalty.
Yeah, of course.
You know what I mean?
But it was an opportunity for racism to show.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
definitely.
So it's like that, even those people that say support their club, the moment they could hop on somebody because of the colour of
dived on
their
it.
skin, they done it. They jumped
dived
on
on
it, and they and it's absolutely, yeah, it's a
Like,
difficult
I've no
one.
problem. I think, right now, I don't know how I'm going to word this and come across correct. I think you should be allowed to abuse players. As in, like, if you pay to go to a football match, you should be allowed to call Raheem Sterling a cunt.
Well, there's a difference between holding someone accountable and abusing them.
Yeah.
So you hold your team accountable.
But I mean, in the terms of, like, you should be able to make the atmosphere hostile. As in,
Really?
there should be an environment for you to
Yeah.
say, this is our home ground. If you're coming here, we're going to make it tough
Yeah,
for you.
Oh,
definitely.
you
Yeah, I
mean for
agree
the
with
other
that.
team?
Yeah, as in, like, if he, like,
yeah.
if I was sitting at the pitch and he runs by, I'm going to say, you're a prick, you're a cunt. I think you should be allowed to do that.
Okay.
As in, that kind of abuse.
To an extent, though.
But I don't think you should automatically go down to the fact, say, right, I'm going to abuse his heritage and his culture. His skin
Yeah.
colour.
But then, see, that becomes then, right? So, like, if I can try and compare to, say, to running a political campaign, right?
Yeah.
Did you ever watch when politicians do negative campaigning?
Yeah.
So they attack their opponents, attack. I just shut off, right? Because I think if you're a good enough sports person, if you're a good enough player, right? Well, then you don't need to negatively campaign against the other person because how amazing you are shows no matter what. And actually, the negative campaigning of someone else actually lowers your.
I agree with you. And we seen it in the Dublin Bay South election.
Yeah.
Only recently, and was it Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael?
Yeah.
Well, like, Sinn Féin are out.
That is unbelievable. Like that negative campaign. Like
Like, imagine saying that to
You're-
somebody,
you're
you should
not
go out
vo-
and vote because this other party is running.
You're
Not
lit-
because my party is running, but this other
you're
party is running.
literally attacking from the ditch at that stage because you've nothing to offer. So if you have something to offer as a player, if you have something to offer as a sport, as a fighter, as a politician, you shouldn't have to negative campaign. Your positive campaigning about who you are, what you stand for, how talented you are, and what you're going to give to a game should speak for itself.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
And I agree with you there, but what I meant was, like, you know, Liverpool had a great home record for like 5 years or something
Yeah.
like that, and it was always like, Anfield is such a hard place to go,
Yeah.
and it's because of the fans.
That's the reason
The fans
why,
are
yeah.
on top of you, and they're constantly screaming. So that's what I think you should be like. It shouldn't be a place you like an away team should say, I look forward to going there. So that's what I think you should be. In them terms, you should be allowed to make
Yeah,
it
hostility,
Well,
yeah.
that's
uncomfortable.
Create competition.
Yeah,
It's about the element
that's
of
what I mean.
competition.
Yeah.
But I don't think you should
Yeah.
be fucking
Racially
racially abusing
abusing is
someone.
shocking, yeah.
And then we've touched on it before in a few episodes, but online on social media, and they're like, oh, we can't combat it on social media. Yes, you can. Like, if you type the word COVID in on a status or a tweet or an update, it gets flagged. If you type the word, and do this yourself, someone brought it to our attention because they were searching their friend's name, and his name was Killian. So you type in the letters Kill, and the first thing that comes up, it's like, like a help kind of thing, like, are you thinking about this? So they're able to monitor what you're saying.
Technology's
Yeah,
there.
exactly.
So why
Yeah.
can't you just say, right, we're going to flag every racial slur and have a list of racial slurs, and then obviously as that goes on, and someone will be like, oh, look, you can't say this word, but this one got through. Right, we'll update the list. We'll add that to the list. That's now on a block list of words. There you go. Now it's not going to stop someone being a racist, but it'll stop it being broadcasted online.
Definitely,
so,
yeah.
I don't know, maybe this is my hot take, a conspiracy theorist. I genuinely think these platforms want that because it brings attention to someone's page.
It does. Like, I mean, like, nothing survives without attention, good, bad publicity.
Yeah.
Like, and you only have to look at how the Sun in the UK, you know, rile up even the fans
Yeah.
of themselves, or, you know, in Ireland, even, you know, when even crime writers rile up scenarios that don't exist and do exist, and adding on, like, so, like, papers and media platforms do benefit from that. Like,
Yeah,
do you know what I
like
mean?
they're
Their
capable of stopping
algorithms
it.
benefit from that until it's in their favour.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So it's like, obviously, you know, COVID, it flags up vaccines, misinformation, conspiracy theories, and I agree that they all should be flagged, but COVID now affects them in their privileged position, so they'll flag that one and they'll allow that one come up. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
But if you're a white privileged man that owns, you know, big huge multi-corporations or big huge social media platforms, you're really not affected by classism or racism or any of those things. So you're not
You
really,
don't give a bollocks.
you know?
That's why I don't.
Yeah.
That's why I think it's in their best interest. So
Well, of course it is. Like, as you just said there, if they can flag, kill, COVID, why
Why can't you
wouldn't
flag
they
it?
just do it?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
And if you look at the media today, it's like, oh, these 3 players who missed the penalties have been racially abused. So what are people going to do? Click onto their profile to see the
You
abuse.
see it, yeah.
And
I did
it's-
it myself.
yeah.
I went on, and the comments are shocking.
But as well, you have racists going onto their page, so it's a big, huge influx in traffic
Yeah.
onto them social media platforms. So I think they're going to be like, right, look at, walk away. Oh, we'll try and ban 1 or 2 people here and there, right? But you're not stopping them people creating a new account tomorrow.
Well, that's why there's a
Calvin
petition
O'Brien
now
is banned.
going around.
All right, grand. But Calvin O'Brien _1 isn't banned, and that's me then back on the platform tomorrow.
There's a petition going around that you need to sign up with, like your actual ID and all
And
that.
it should be.
That's the way it should be, you know what I mean?
I'm a bit nervous though about like because you're constantly then giving your data to again those same corporations we just talked about
Yeah.
don't really care. So you're giving them your data and your everything by what you upload. So like when you sign up, when you put your email address in, when you put your photo ID in and all that kind of stuff, you're actually giving the people we're giving out about more data on you, your age profile, everything. So there's like pros and cons to how much you give a platform, but you definitely should have to verify like with a legitimate email address and you know all of those things. There has to
Yeah.
be a way to work the bots out and all that kind of stuff out.
Definitely, yeah.
But I am always a little bit conscious about having to upload your passport onto like a media platform that already uses your data to target you in particular ways.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Well, in fairness, we do already. You enter in your email address.
Yeah.
And you enter in your date of birth. So
Yeah.
they kind of know
They're
that much
already
already.
Yeah, but you
profiling
can just
anyway.
make up a little stupid email address.
Yeah,
to
no,
it,
I
and
mean,
Yeah.
what Lynn is talking about is they're going to use your data to push ads towards you and profile you.
They're already
But
doing
they're already
that.
doing
Yeah,
it
yeah.
anyway, so why
Yeah,
not
yeah.
at least hold someone accountable?
Yeah.
Like if you sign up for a betting service or any other service, you have to verify with like if you sign up for a GoFundMe, you have to verify
Yeah.
with like legit ID. So why not do that and we stamp down and we have a new age of social media going forward?
Yeah.
You know?
Right, well, that's our take on the Euros anyways. Talk about a tangent there.
Sorry about that.
The McGregor fight.
You kick us off there.
My heart fucking broke over it. Yeah, so the McGregor fight.
Yeah, you take us into that one then.
My heart's broke. Don't know what else to say. I'm absolutely gutted over it. But we had a good night, didn't we?
We had a good night now. It's always a good night watching the fights with the boys. I think,
Yeah, we
anyways.
had a good night out watching it and stuff like that. But my heart is broke.
Yeah.
Do you think McGregor is finished?
It's hard to see where he goes from here. I think in the build-up things were all getting nasty, and I've seen a lot of things on Twitter as well. People like England lost, McGregor lost. It's a good weekend. I think you should always be cheering for an Irish athlete, no matter what you think of them. I think you always should see Irish people doing well. The manner on which he lost as well was nasty, but I think how they handled it, like he should never been interviewed. And I know
shouldn't it? Yeah, 100%.
a lot of people are saying what he said was out of line, but that's only because that fella is in distress. He has his leg is in half and he's lying there, and Joe Rogan snuggles up beside him. Even the man on which he's interviewed, he snuggles up beside him and puts a mic in his face. You could have easily like stood beside him and get him like handed the mic to him.
But
or
even
whatever.
doing it in general, like,
He shouldn't have been interviewed. Full
Yeah.
stop. And the fella who's at is the cause of him breaking his leg is saying stuff to him as he's walking out. He can't go up after him, so obviously he's going to say something to try and agitate and provoke him and come back. So he says some horrible stuff about his wife. So I'm not justifying what he said, but like that's why he said
But
it.
he can't say that if you don't sit down and put a mic up to his face where he has a
so he shouldn't have been
neck.
interviewed. So hopefully going forward they'll just say anytime there's a doctor stoppage, we're not going to interview that person.
Yeah.
He got in hot water over it a couple of years ago when Daniel Cormier got knocked out by John Jones.
Yeah.
He comes back around, gains consciousness, puts a mic in his face, and he's blubbering and he's crying, and it's a horrible interview to watch. And Joe Rogan comes out and he's like, "Oh, I'm very sorry for doing that. I won't do it again." So the fella lying there, his leg snapped in half, and you have a mic in his face.
Yeah.
Horrible.
Did you watch the fight, Lynn?
I didn't. I'm more of a boxing fan. I don't.
Yeah.
I would have watched a few years back, but I don't really watch MMA anymore. Not because I don't support it. I actually think it's an amazing sport and lots of our communities like, you know, and a couple of my friends run MMA gyms and stuff. But I didn't watch the fight. I think I watched one clip that I did enjoy from Dustin Pryor the next day online. And this was me taken from it again and being, maybe I'm going soft in my old age, like, because I was the first one into a scrap at everything, right? But he said something like, Dustin Pryor said something like, I don't wish anybody dead. I just want to see that man go home safe to his kids.
Yeah.
And I just thought, I didn't know the context. I didn't see all the bits you
Yeah.
were talking about.
Yeah.
But I just thought that's quite a powerful statement because it's saying we can fight, we can trash talk, we can do this, but ultimately on a human level, I just want to see you go home safe. And I just kind of, that's all I took from the fight. I was like, oh.
in the build-up,
he's like referencing Tim McGregor saying, I'm going in there with murder shots. He's going out in a stretcher. But I think he took that too literal as well. Like, he's like, you don't joke around about murder or something, but I'm like, does he really mean that he's trying to murder you? Like, he's not going in there with a fucking gun.
He did say in the interviews, they were like, what do you think of this fight? And he's like, I just see a corpse in front of me, he said, about Poirier. He's like, I see a corpse.
But I don't think he meant to show literal, but...
It was just the whole thing. I remember...
Again, for me, it goes back to how do we want to do sports and how do we want to be perceived? You're good at your sport, you're talented at your sport. Like, I mean, obviously there is trash talking and things, but then there probably should be a standard and a level where you go, but you don't go over that. Because then you begin to lose respect or whatever.
Usually at the end of every fight, no matter what they say in the build-up, they shake hands and they embrace each other. I think it's just the manner in which that fight ended because he snapped his leg and Poirier celebrated. Poirier was delighted. Usually, I've seen so many leg breaks and stoppages.
You go over and check how they are.
They usually are humble about it and they check if they're alright. Like his leg was in half and he was celebrating and cheering. And that's why McGregor was giving the loads to him. He's giving the loads back. So just the whole thing was just nasty.
But it's like again, it's taken as well people's lives in sports and making them like a celebrity, as if it's not real people involved. So people sit back and they watch this as if like there's not real people. Like it's a spectacle. You know.
Well, that's the McGregor bit done. Couple of suggestions for this week. Actually, real quick as well. One that I haven't got it right here, but someone was saying about us talking over each other a lot, and like this is like that's gonna happen in an unscripted conversation. Do you know what I mean? Like I think cut us a bit of slack, like you know what I mean? People, because it was twice or three times that saying, "Oh, you're talking over each other a bit much." Like it's an unscripted conversation. It's bound to happen. Anyways, moving on from that. How do you deal with any hate on the podcast? That was one. Don't really get any to me. Well, like it's real. Like that's not hate when someone says that.
I know there was a comment made that was brought to our attention where someone said, I've never listened to that podcast. I'm sure it's all the same as every other podcast. And we were like, all right, that's a bit narrow-minded thing to say. And someone retweeted it and said, I'm jealous of this person because they've 30 episodes of Talking Bollox to catch up on. And I thought like that was a huge compliment for us.
Yeah, definitely,
hey, we've had some comments. We've engaged with a couple of people as well. And I think when we've engaged with people, they've saw, oh, geez, that's not just two youngblets who are literally talking bollocks. These are two fellas who kind of have a bit about them. They know what they're doing. Criticism, you have to take her in because what we've said from the start, if you're willing to take compliments in, you have to take criticism in. You can't just have people saying, yous are great, yous are this, that, and the other, and highlight that. You have to bring attention to the fact that people are saying, well, you need to do this better, or you could have done that better.
Yeah, it's going to come with it, isn't it?
Yeah, I think you should take criticism on board, you know.
Like there's healthy criticism, like, you know, but I think you have stepped into a space, right, where everybody wants to comment on something, right? Yeah. And when you have an accent like ours or you dress like us, sometimes we're easy targets. And I think maybe you haven't even hit those people yet. I think you have been lucky enough to actually be surrounded by people that support you. Like I get handwritten letters from people. Like I get, like I've been called dragged up little slut, where were our parents? Like I mean, I get lashed out of it, right? And I also get a huge amount of love and support. So I've had to learn to navigate that because some of it really hurt because I'd be talking about like me kids or my parents who were amazing. Do you know what I mean? And it's just, you have to try and find a way to navigate through that shit because it can get you really, really down because sometimes, and I think what yous have done well is shown a vulnerability, right? And vulnerability is powerful, but some people like to take that vulnerability then and use it as throw the insult at you. And they actually know they're hitting that little scar and it actually hurts and they do that purposely and so I have filters on everything. I don't read comments in newspapers. Like I write articles all the time, I'm written about all the time. I don't read a single comment under journal articles or Irish Times articles or anything like that anymore. My Twitter is filtered, so only particular words come up. So like slurs, anything doesn't come up in my feed. I've had to literally and that doesn't mean I'm not aware when people, so people will give me healthy criticism. Like I didn't really appreciate how you handled da-da-da-da-da. I felt, and that's different. That's having a discussion with someone that actually just wants to engage with you or had a different thought or felt, you know what I mean? And that's completely different. But see all the insults that will come at you, just absolutely learn how to ignore that completely. Yeah,
because it's going to come, because last week or so, remember this That Life thing.
Yeah.
This website. There's a
Have you heard of
website. Have
this?
you ever heard of it? That
It's I guess shivers talking about Lynn because I can't believe it exists.
it's anonymous accounts that go on to it, and they just roast people like.
It's a message board kind of thing,
Right.
but deliberately set up just to talk bad about people.
Yeah. And
Like
last.
that's their own, like that. Like you'd want to be feeling sorry for that.
Yeah, it's
See everyone on
madness.
that, they need to be addressed and like took into a room and assessed and be
Yeah.
like, are you okay?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I am concerned. No, like
Yeah,
that's not
you're
even
right.
a
No,
joke.
really?
No, you're
Like, if you have the time of
completely
day.
true.
I'm
Yeah.
worried. Like
That's absolute madness. But last week, someone said to me, type your name into it and see if there's anything there. And I always said, because I really don't give a bollocks about it. And I was like, I don't really care. They were like, just do it and see if you're honest. So I did it. And holy mother of Jesus Christ, I hate a jumpler out there.
No.
They were roasting me.
Don't ever do that again.
All I want. It
Don't
didn't
do it
get to me though.
again.
you looked up yourself, did you?
Yeah, so I went
Tell-
on Tatloop and
but tell
typed
your
in.
mates not to tell you anything either. Tell your mates not
Yeah,
to tag
yeah.
you in other people's posts,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
My friends know if you want to go to battle for me on someone's post on Facebook that I'm never going to see, fine, go to battle for me. Don't be fucking tagging me to have to read it. Just
Yeah.
don't. I don't want to know.
Well, that's what happened on Twitter a couple of weeks ago. Remember some fella called you a cokehead?
Cokehead, yeah. That was over
I
there.
wasn't having any of it.
I was like, what the fuck? That
Yeah.
was over the fucking, the new fucking law that came in with the guard.
About the guard
check
being
your
able
phone
to
with a
go
word.
check
Yeah.
your phone. And I wasn't having it, mate.
He was like, of course you'll be worried you're the next cokehead. I was like,
No,
mate,
he didn't
will
call
give
you
me
an
a break.
ex-cokehead. He goes,
Oh,
you are a cokehead.
Yeah, it was something like
And
that.
I
yeah.
seen it and I was like, hold on for a minute. And I went to town on your man. And your man, like, literally, he backed himself into a corner and he knew he killed his own argument. I was just like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
What are we talking about here?
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
so
yeah.
that's how we deal with the criticism. I try and break it down. So if someone's complaining about something, I try and address what they're complaining about. But if someone's just coming in with, like, just pure hate like that,
They're
my
just being
favourite one on
nasty
Apple
about it.
Podcasts, remember your man who, what did he call us?
Two uneducated
Uneducated.
delinquents or something.
Just keep writing back, your ma.
But some fella called us two uneducated delinquents with something. But like the fact he called us uneducated.
Two
and-
fell melted.
Yeah, two fell out uneducated delinquents, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when he said uneducated, and the title of his review was worst than Bollox. So we spelled it shouldn't be worst, it should be worse than Bollox. So I was like, we're uneducated, but we're able to highlight
Should
your
have said
mistake.
it's actually Worcester.
But like, there's nothing you can do there. Like, that's just somebody right who just straight up doesn't like us. Right,
Yeah.
we'll leave that one. But if someone says like what Taryn said, oh, you keep interrupting each other. Like, we're addressing that.
That's constructive criticism.
Yeah, we're
That's
addressing
all
that.
right, you know
We
what I
can
mean?
try and fix that, but it is what it is. Like what you said, Lynn. If someone said to you, I didn't agree with you, what you made this point, yeah, you can have a conversation about that and
Yeah.
express your views. But someone's coming at you and saying, oh, you're a nasty person or whatever. It's like, all right, sound blocked. Good luck.
Right, that's that one done. How far are you planning on going with the podcast?
To the moon.
Yeah, it's right
Yeah.
to the very top, isn't it? Well, that's the aim, like, you know what I mean? We're doing all right so far. I'd like to think so. And anyways, we were number one in Ireland, trending number one loads of times before that and stuff like that. So, yeah, right to the top. Like, secure as the number one podcast in
Yeah.
Ireland.
Like I said at the start, we started off in my kitchen, bounced around kitchens,
Yeah,
hair salons, barbershops, beauty salons.
yeah,
And now here we are in a studio, signed with Go Loud, you know.
yeah.
I don't know.
Just right to the top.
Yeah, we just keep going, keep this trending. We have a senator sitting beside us,
There's
for fuck's
so
sake.
many amazing working class people that have never been heard in Ireland, right? Their narrative has never been heard. Their story, like people tell stories about us. We never get to tell our own story. So, like, the more you just keep platforming those voices, there's a moment in time where you can change how working class people get to shape their own narrative and shape their own story. So instead of people talking about us, we get to talk for ourselves and advocate for ourselves. So as long as you just keep doing that, like, regardless of being number one, regardless of being anything, you're doing something very special. Like, look at Gemma Dunleavy. Like, I mean, I absolutely love Gemma Dunleavy. She has so much to offer Ireland in terms of even understanding the deepest of, like, political understanding of things. Like, you keep platforming those people. Working class people get to tell their own story for the first time, and I think that that's just tops.
Yeah, Gemma is unbelievable. I was actually only saying before we got in here, I was saying I'd love Gemma to do her own podcast because I'd listen to her all day. When we did that episode with her, my God, she's so intelligent.
We spent an hour and 50 minutes or something just talking, then being like, oh wait, Yeah, talk about music as well, actually. Yeah.
Or even the one with your mum, like I downloaded that and sent that to all, like I've worked in addiction for 20 years. I've sent that to everybody, right? Because women's shame and mother is one of the hardest to talk about subjects, and I've never heard it done like that's been done there. And I've been studying addiction and worked in addiction for a long, long time. Like, and I've sent that to all the services that I've worked for. And I said, you need to listen to this episode with the women that you're working with, so that they can actually like freely be able to engage and relate to what it feels like to feel shame as a mother and as a woman, because it was done amazingly. Like, see that stuff, like just all that stuff you won't even know is happening, like that people are benefiting from those conversations. And I think that in itself is powerful.
And that's what we talk about. So when the question is there's like, where do you plan on taking it? Like, there's nobody out there who's doing things like this. Like, we're openly talking honestly, and that's something I always say about podcasts. You have to be honest with a podcast. If you want to sugarcoat it, you should have a show on some other media platform. This is not a show.
But I was only saying as well before this, I credit all that to Calvin, because I never did that. Never in my life would I have spoke openly like that, and I never did before. And then this cunt blade in my ear, no, just do it, what's the worst that can happen? You're putting it out there, you'll help someone. And then we did it from episode 2, and I was like, oh Calvin, I don't really want that out there. And then now we just start opening up, like, that's all Calvin, because I never did that with a podcast.
But the thing about what happened with his ma, so he's opened up about his past and his vulnerabilities and his struggles with addiction and stuff like that. There's no other podcast out there that's doing stuff like that. And then who's going to bring in someone like their mother who was suffering from their own side and discuss that? And I said it from the start. Well, not from the start. From that episode, that was my favourite episode, because I'm honoured just to be there and look at that happening and how it unfolded. I was like, this is unbelievable. And I do say to Terence, not in a bad way, but it would have been better if he wasn't in the room.
100%.
Because I agree with him as well. Like, if it was my ma sitting there, I wouldn't want to be there, and I wouldn't want my ma to be there like that. And the fact that he was able to sit there and look at it, and you could see it in his face as well, his facial expressions, like, he was just flabbergasted with it. He's like, oh my God, like, what? Yeah. Like, this is my ma talking. And you could see, I know you've buried the hatchet before, but you could see they kind of rekindled and reconnected.
Well, there's healing in open
That's
dialogue.
That's what it was,
do you know what I mean?
and it was magical.
You're not hiding behind anything. Then it's there, it's real. You get to see a person not as a parent or a son or anything. It's just like, I'm a normal fucked up human person. You're a normal fucked up human person, and we're flawed as fuck. Yeah, and we're just meeting here. We're just meeting here in the flawedness.
Yeah. Well, we're flawed by design, like humans are, you know. And it was great to see that being addressed, and a lot of people can relate, as you were saying. I don't think a lot of people are doing podcasts the way we do it as well. We tell people, if you don't want to talk about something, let us know. This isn't an interview, and we say it all the time, it's a chat. So
we had to stop you about 12 times last week. If you're going to ask this in the interview, fuck off, it's not an interview.
It's a chat. Like, we're not here to catch someone out. We're not here to like get clickbait. Oh, Senator Lynn Ruane said this, blah, blah. No, we're not like that. We're just having a chat here. Yeah. That's why I think so many people relate and say, it feels like I'm in the room, which is when you're talking, because we're just talking about normal day-to-day stuff, you know. And I just hopefully we can keep that going and we can reach a bigger audience, get bigger names in, but get more relatable people in. And I think people like working class, they're salt of the earth, you know what I mean? And as you said, Lynn, we need to platform more people.
Funnier than anyone else on the planet.
The laugh we have.
The darkest humour ever.
Yeah. We only said it today, how much we love coming in to do this. And it keeps us so busy. Like, if it wasn't for this, like, lockdown would have been lockdown was a load of shit, but like, how much darker it would have been for us, because it kept us so busy. We're constantly on the go with this podcast.
Yeah. Right, well, that's all the suggestions boxed off anyway, so.
One more thing actually I want to mention where we're going to take it. Live shows. We will do a live show some stage.
Oh my God, my nerves, they'll be gone down this. Imagine well, this is sort of live, like,
it's
you know
live
what I mean?
enough, yeah.
But no, my nerves will be gone, but yeah, we're
going to be doing a live show, and there's going to be audience. That's the next step. So the last step before this was to get into the studio, get it up and running. Here we are. The next step is live shows, and we will get there. Yeah. That's where the podcast is going.
100%. So that's all that boxed off. Anyways, we have the Lynn Ruane one at the end of the table. How are you?
Good.
How was your Monday?
It's not only Monday, is it?
Oh, is it? Yeah, it is Monday. But just before we jump into you, Lynn, how about this for a fresh cut off the boys at 400? Yeah, shout out to Darryl McLaughlin, Ross Brown, the lads at 400. Yeah. Lynn.
Hang on, I have to shout out Jordan O'Mahony.
What, you shouting out your barber
Yeah,
now?
well,
My barber, smash your barber up.
Yeah, we'll get that. We'll have a fade off.
But, yeah, Lynn, bring us right back to the start.
Jesus. Right to the start.
Right to
Yeah,
the
you
start.
may as well go on then.
What's your
Okay.
name? Where are you from?
So my name is Lynn Ruane. I'm from Tala, but well, my mum is from Finglas. So her family grew up in Finglas West Encasement, which would be the Losties there, and then we kind of lived in Ballymun originally, but I wouldn't have much memory
Sorry
of
to
the
hear.
flats, and then and then out to Tala. Are you more sorry for Ballymun or more sorry for Tala?
Oh, I don't know. It's a bit
That's
touch and
close
go
one.
with
That's
that.
a close one.
About
No, is that a zinger?
Ballymun at Tala, which is worse.
But so I'm living in Tala. I'm 36, so we've been in Tala like
It's only a nipper.
34 years.
Only a
Well,
pup.
I am. I've lived about 19 lives. Like I should have really retired about 6 years ago. But so yeah, like I mean, growing up was good. You're kind of locked in your own little cul-de-sac, so you don't really know that there's anything else existing outside of that. There's a good singer. Is it a
Cul-de-sac.
cul-de-sac or a
I was gonna say
cul-de-sac?
it. I didn't want to say it because.
Oh! Is it a cul-de-sac or a cul-de-sac?
I call it a cul-de-sac.
What's
yeah.
a cul-de-sac?
A cul-de-sac.
A cul-de-sac.
Fuck
Just
off.
a-
Don't you
Okay.
don't call it a cul-de-sac.
It's a cul-de-sac.
Fuck off, Karen. You definitely call it a cul-de-sac.
I've never heard of cul-de-sac in my
I
life.
used to always call it a cul-de-sac. And I used to think, do you know what I used to think was called a cul-de-sac? Because it goes around. I swear to God. It's a cul-de-sac. It goes around and comes back.
I've never ever heard of that. That's a pretty
And then it's only when I seen it spelled out.
This whole thing, I'll try and tell my story without any more of that. Right?
Yeah, it's only when I seen it spelled out, it's cul-de-sac. Yeah,
I used to
that has
think
to be
it was
French or
cul-de-sac.
something, is it?
I don't know.
Tell us the origin of that one then.
I know. Well, I could tell you the origin of cul-de-sac.
Yeah, well,
but it
yeah,
was
no, we'll leave it
2:40
there.
for the podcast.
Fucking hell, we're going to put an 18's warning on this.
But so yeah, so like growing up was grand. I lived with my mum and dad. My dad was originally from Oliver Bond, and then Ballyferma. So we'd quite just a working class life, working class family. Mum and dad worked really hard since they were kids, left school when they were quite young. So there was just me and my brother. Like I said, my dad was a sportsman, so we were quite involved with sports growing up. And then my brother was quite a good kid and really focused on playing for Liverpool, and he had a bit of an obsession with Dublin bus as well. So my mum had to bring him out on Dublin bus every day for about 12 years. But beyond that, then everything was normal. I was probably a little bit different in the family always growing up. Well, I felt I was. I had like
Are you older or
the
younger?
youngest.
Yeah.
So I think I had a bit of a persecution thing, you know. So it was like they like their brother better. Like I
Yeah.
always paid attention to everything. I was always very curious and philosophically minded, and always asking lots of questions and wanting to join lots of things, but never staying with them. And my mind would be, I think I got thrown out with play school for like attacking a boy that wouldn't give me a shot at tractor, and you know, so like really academic, so really intelligent, but just couldn't respond to structure or couldn't respond to being told what to do or where to go or authority.
Sounds like someone I know.
In any shape or form,
Like,
like unless I really liked you. Like I had some teachers that really knew how to work with me, and they didn't impose themselves on me. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean? And I
yeah.
could respond to that. So school was was grand. Like I was always cheeky and I was always the kind of messer, but still really smart. And my mum taught me how to read by the time I was 2. Like she just read so much, and she made sure that I had a really good understanding, I suppose, of books and being able to read books and not being afraid of books, not being afraid of words. And I always look back now and now kind of really know how much that stood to me, because I'm not you know what I mean? Because sometimes I think if we don't understand the written word, we go, oh, I can't read that, that's too
Yeah.
big or that's too anything. But because of how much she had me read, even if I didn't understand it, I would keep going at it and get a dictionary and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. So she really instilled that in me quite young. But I was still a little bit kind of boisterous, very much a tomboy. Played soccer, played for Lord Celtic for years, and I loved it, loved playing ball. 'cause
Any else?
I was all
Where'd you
right.
play
I
up
was
front?
no, I was a defender.
Centre half?
She loves smashing people.
Smashing people up.
But I was never the best, or you know, I was average and good, and played ball, and I went back to football there about 2 months ago, and then strained my calf. My kids were like, did you go for your first time to join a team and you strained your calf in the warm-up? Like, I'm scarlet for you.
Yeah.
I'm scarlet for you. And I'm like, yeah, all right, drop it. But anyway, I've gone back to play
into
football
bed.
again. But I do run the Oireachtas football team as well. Like, so I
Your
organise
Oireachtas
matches.
has a football team.
Yeah.
No, they don't.
Fuck off.
Organise a game
Fuck off.
in Sheriff.
No way.
God. We've played in the prisons, we played out in the Shamrock Rover Stadium with some of the lads in recovery, and we've played in youth, and we played against the off the ball lads.
The Oireachtas has a football team.
Yeah, it's ad hoc, like we just pull it together, like, and yeah, like I've had ministers out on the pitch in Tala.
That's
I've
right,
had,
correct.
Oh, yeah,
I've
Bob-
had Shane
oh my
Ross
God.
in a pink, well, Shane Ross was the Minister of Sport. I had him in a pink Shamrock Rovers jersey running around Tala after ball, like, yeah, good crack.
Oireachtas FC.
Yeah. Yeah.
Their own
Yeah.
chance and all.
A Oireachtas FC. So very heavily involved in sport. So you can see, like, I had all the right ingredients just to do grand,
Yeah.
but still didn't really conform much in a sense. So by the age of 12, like, I would have started mitching from school a little bit, and I was
She says
smoking
Mitching.
or on the hop, mitching or
No,
on the
it's
hop.
Oh, it's Mitching. You're on the ball there.
But I would say on the hop as well.
That's
Are you,
childish.
no, so actually it depends if you're talking about, if you're offering someone the action of doing it. So are you going on the hop? Is a question targeted? Or I went on the mitch? Do you know, so one is possession, I went on the mitch, and one is, are you going to do something?
The verb is mitching.
Is that what it, yeah.
that what you're saying?
I don't know, because I wouldn't be able to even tell you what's a verb or
A verb is an action. A verb is an action.
Yeah.
An action word.
Yeah.
Like playing is
Yeah.
a verb.
Yeah.
To play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So see, I can
mitching.
write a book, but don't fucking ask me what a
Yeah.
verb is.
She's after spending the last 5 minutes telling us like she's not afraid of words and
I'm
she'll
not.
understand some, but
I'm not.
she's afraid of the word verb.
Yeah, because then you're putting structure on it. You're trying to tell me what bracket it fits into.
She's dropping knowledge on the boys here. I'm baffled.
Oh, yeah, that's
But so then, like, yeah, so I had that kind of normal childhood, safe home, very safe home. Like, my mum and dad didn't even smoke, and I think my dad had his first drink when he was like 42, like when he finished playing.
Fucking hell.
When he finished playing League of Ireland football, I think, like, so that was really instilled in us. Like, so my dad would say, like, you know, I'll give you £1,000 when you're 16 if you've never smoked. So by the time I was fucking 11 with a joint hanging out of my mouth, he was
Yeah.
like, I'll give you £1,000 if you stop smoking hash. He had to keep changing the goalposts.
Yeah.
for me, like, but he was good at that, you know what I mean? He never just cut you off. He kind of was like, okay, this is not working. I'll need to reassess
A new
how I
approach to
manage
this
this.
one, yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So started using drugs quite young. Experienced a lot of people dying around me. It's always the thing I speak about the most is, you know, like, you know, there's nowhere else in other communities that say have resources or investment or professional backgrounds where you can be 12 and 13 and have gone to like 6 funerals of kids that are not much older than you. You know, it's so it's so wrong and unnatural, and it's so traumatic. And I think as kids, especially me, because I was like a sponge, I was sensitive to what was going on around me. I watched everything, I listened to everything. I took that in very much, and I really thought I'm going to die really young. Like, everyone I know is dying and I'm only 12 and 13. And then I witnessed a pal be hit by a bus and she died. And then after that, my friends, and you know, like, Terence, you're reading the book, you will see how quick succession, like, I tell a story in the book and you learn by the end of that story that I'm the only one still alive. And I hadn't even hit 15 at that stage. So that's not normal, and that causes obviously massive amount of trauma in a child's life. But we don't realise that it's not supposed to be like that. So it becomes normalised. So we don't even realise we're having traumatic events, but we are. So, like, I would have then been acting out. I would have been quite angry. I would have been always, like, fighting people, like, starting on people just so I could feel someone hit me, like, and have to hit them back. Do you know what I mean? But then just thinking, like, and then internalising that as I'm just rowdy, or I just love a fucking scrap, or but actually I wasn't. I was trying to find.
Stems from somewhere.
It was it was unusual, like, do you know what I mean? So that kind of dominated, like, my early teens. Just my pals dying, realising that their life was just gone, and then caring less about minding my own life. So you would think that if people are dying around you, well, then you would try to do the right things not to die.
You
But it
realise how
doesn't-
precious
yeah,
life is and how
you-
easy it can be took
yeah.
away, but you went the opposite.
The
You're like,
opposite. So
"Fuck
in
it."
my head, I was like, I'm obviously going to die very young. So, and so your risk, your ability, you just start taking more risks with your life.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, so I would be like robbing cars and joyriding and, you know, taking real pride at how good of a shoplifter I was. Like at that age, like not thinking, I used to want to be a vet when I was 6, but now not knowing any vets. So if I'm going to succeed and be good at something, well then look at me, I'm a great thief. Do you know what I mean? And setting my standard and value of myself on that thing, because I didn't know how to be anything else, because I didn't know anyone that was the professions that I thought I wanted to be when I was younger. And the professions that I did know, there were usually people that provided you a service. So it was your doctor, but there was never a doctor that spoke like you or dressed like you, or there was never a teacher with your accent, or, you know, so you marked all them things. I marked all them things off very early in my
As
head.
like unachievable.
Unachievable.
Yeah.
Yeah, it didn't make sense. That's not me. I don't recognise myself in any of these people.
Yeah.
And you, like, so that stuff is happening. Now, obviously I'm able to go back as an adult and place that narrative on that and look at that. Do you know what I mean? Like at that stage, I don't know how much I was like acknowledging that they were the
Aware,
decisions
like,
that I
yeah.
was making. Do you know what I mean? But I
Yeah.
was just, I went from feeling really happy with my friends, being out of my head on E or something, feeling like that's just such an amazing connection. We're in this together. Nobody else in the world understands that we've just buried 3 friends in the last 2 years, but I know, and you know, and you know. So we're just going to stay huddled in this derelict house and take E all night because we're the only ones that understand this. So you don't think your parents will ever understand, your teachers can't understand, because they're not experiencing that trauma that you are at that level. So drug use for me also became about that connection and being with people that were experiencing the same stuff as I was.
And do you think that you use that like to wash out the survivor's guilt kind of thing?
Yeah, well, I think survivor's guilt for me kicked in much later on. I probably didn't feel like, you know, sometimes I've had to battle with survivor's guilt for a long time. I do feel a collective solidarity constantly with my community, and I do feel like sometimes I don't understand how I'm not, sometimes I don't still get it. Like, I'm like, why am I not dead? Do you know what I mean? What the fuck happened? But I suppose a part of that story was I got pregnant when I was 15 on Jordan, who is 21 next month. And, you know, at that age, I wasn't bothered about being pregnant. I just was like, great. You know what I mean? Like, and now looking back, I look at my daughters when they hit that age and think, Jesus Christ.
Fucking hell,
yeah.
how young it really is.
Yeah, how much of a baby I actually was. But
Yeah.
I was broken. Do you know what I mean? I was
Yeah.
just a broken teenager.
What
And
age, sorry Lynn for cutting across there,
Yeah.
what age were you talking about starting doing drugs at there?
I'd say 11,
Was that smoking hash?
smoking hash and drinking.
So you really felt like a grown. If you started at 11 doing these type
Progressed
of things, you obviously
really
felt
quick.
like you were an adult at
I
15.
yeah.
You know?
And what
yeah.
did that progress like really quick?
So
What,
right
yeah.
through, like, everything then from, like, it would switch. So, like, speed was really big then. Do you know what I mean? In the 90s, like, you would, you know, you'd go to fucking cream fields, you know, which, like, before oxygen and all existed, with big bags of speed. Like, we were only kids drinking in pubs at 13, 14, and them not realising even how young you are, you know. So drinking, smoking, taking E. Then it would have been coke nearer when I got to 14, 15, because when you're getting a little bit older, it's only when you're at that stage, it was only when you were at that cusp of an age where you could hang around with the 18, 19, 20-year-olds and they would have coke. Do you know what I mean? But when you were 12, you weren't really around the older lads, so it was more the cheaper drugs at that stage that
Yeah.
you could kind of get your hands on. And then I started, like, I would take anything you handed to me, absolutely anything. Sometimes I just wanted to be asleep. Sometimes I just wanted to be I never wanted to die, but sometimes I just wanted to be temporarily removed from the feeling that I was feeling.
So numb.
Just, yeah, you know, like sometimes I would I remember taking some, God, it was probably like a morphine tablet or it was something anyway that just knocked me out. Like, I just woke up 4 hours later on the field in Cushlawn, like, do you know what I mean? And just went, and it was like it was nothing. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, when I look back now, I'm like, fucking hell, I was really, really trying to escape some. Now, some drug use was fun. Some drug use was trying to just
get away.
neutralise something inside of myself. And then when I got pregnant, I stopped smoking hash, which was the kind of thing that I would do from the second I woke up till the second I went to sleep. Just stopped smoking hash, stopped doing drugs, stopped drinking. And I think, like, not all my friends managed to do that when they got pregnant so I think maybe there was something that happened when I got pregnant that it was just on the cusp of me completely losing myself to addiction and not. Do you know what I mean? I think another year I probably would have been strung out on heroin. Do you know what I mean? But there was something about that moment that something clicked into me. And I always remember my mum when I was younger talking about, like, you know, not drinking when you were pregnant and all these different things. And I think I just must have tried to mirror that, and I just stopped doing everything.
So it's like a crossroads kind of.
Yeah,
something.
completely.
Yeah, it diverted you there, and
but no, it wasn't easy.
yeah,
Do you know what I mean? But then in that moment, I had something to look after, and I think that gave me life a little bit of purpose.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
We've heard this before. It's a very common thing in people who are abusing themselves or in self-destruct mode, but the second they find out they're pregnant, it's not about them anymore, and it shows who you are as a person. Because a lot of people would look at addiction as, oh, you're selfish. You're not looking at what you're doing to the people around you. You don't care about anybody. But what more purpose can you give than giving somebody a life to look after, and especially when that life depends on that person? So it's one thing having a child and be like, I have to look after that, but it's what you do to yourself is actually going to depend on this child that's grown inside you. So it shows who you are and how actually caring you are as a person. You're not selfish. It's quite the opposite, actually, that you are going on this road of self-destruct, and it's only going to end one way. But the second you find out, oh well, there's a person grown inside you, you just click, and that's it then.
Yeah, like I think there's probably a few different factors that go into it. Like I think for me then it's like, so I would have thought that it was a positive thing. Of course it was a positive thing. I wasn't doing drugs while I was pregnant. But like, I also don't have any sort of judgments of people that that are in really much more chaotic depths of addiction than I was at that stage. That's why I said I think I was just at the cusp of, like, I think if I had have started smoking heroin, I don't think that would have been as easy to do. Do you know what I mean? As it was.
It kind of saved you in a way.
Totally.
Becoming pregnant.
A million %. And that's hard to say because you definitely don't want to be promoting teenage pregnancy to be, because everyone's life is different and everyone responds differently to a situation, and I just responded well in that moment to it. But what I thought was a positive in the fact that she gave me purpose, so this allows me to do something different with my life. What I learned really then through those years after was, actually, that's an awful lot for a child to carry. Do you know what I mean? So she had to carry that. I'm the reason my mum's alive. You know what I mean? Or I'm the reason my dad will be okay. And then she internalises them moments when we're not. Because if I kept framing to her for years like that, she saved me. And she was like, yeah, I know. So she took on so much. Because like,
do you actually say this to her?
Yeah,
or when she's young?
I would have said it when she was young, like, you know, you be like I was only a kid, like, so I'd be saying, like, she would have just seen it or heard conversations, or I would have she would have been responsible for my living, and that's no place for a child also to be in, because then when I got it wrong or when I fucked up, or I was still a traumatized teenager, so I still had anger rages, I was still screaming, I was still fucking, you know what I mean, it was all still in me. It didn't just disappear.
Yeah, you still had this.
It was all the
baggage
trauma
there,
was still there, and so she would have absorbed so much of that. Do you know what I mean? And so even though I was battling to survive, I was still leaving collateral damage in that battle. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So even though I went back to education after I got pregnant, I still was traumatized. Like, I'm at 36, I can still get triggered in the trauma that I feel. Do you know what I mean? So something could happen that triggers off every single little, like, so one thing could happen that seems small, but and I always explain it, like, you know, like, say inside yourself, if there was like a frog and it was on a lily pad, right? And the rest of the different traumatic experiences that happen to you in your life are other lily pads, and they're all around your body. And one thing happens in your day that reminds you of an old trauma, or it triggers it, and it just hits that lily pad, and then that frog jumps off all of a sudden, and it just jumps on all those other trauma points real quickly, and all of a sudden, what seemed like a tiny little scenario in your day, you've gone into a fucking rage. But you're too young to realise that you're having a trauma response to something. So it took me years to try and unravel all of that through therapy. Like, so I went to counselling, I engaged in education. I started working in addiction by the time I was 17. I went and studied addiction in IT talent on a Wednesday evening, and I got employed really quick because the local drugs project realised I was very young and still quite volatile, and they used that to their benefit, which was amazing, because I mean, they seen me as a way in to the young fellas that were just a few years below me, who were already strung out on heroin. So I started developing programs for them. So even though I was doing all the right things and trying my best, there was still a huge amount of pain inside me, and that would come out in all sorts of different ways. Do you know what I mean? And self-sabotage, and, you know, falling out with people and fighting with people, like people walking on eggshells around you. Do you know what I mean? In case you fucking lose your temper and fucking start shouting at them for something tiny. You know what I mean? So all them. So it's like, for me, you can be doing the right things and you can still be all the other things at the same time, and those two things can exist together. And you start to learn different skills and tools to not let the trauma pieces be the first thing that happens, even if you feel it. Do you know what I mean?
I actually know so many people like that, Lynn, who have so much going for them, and you look at them and you'd say, like, they're doing really well considering where they came from, and the least little inconvenience would happen, and they just go self-destruct, and they don't give a bollocks about anything. They're like, jobs scrapped, relationships scrapped, they don't give a fuck, and they just ruin everything. And from the outside looking in, I'd be like, why did you let that one little thing ruin all the good things? But then
Never
obviously,
that one little thing.
there's obviously a lot more under that.
Yeah.
You know, it's like tip of the iceberg kind of thing. But it's only when you're saying it now, and I'm thinking back to the examples I have in my head of the people I know, I'm like, that actually makes a lot of sense. And it's only because I know them so personally. I know they must have went through stuff, traumatic in childhood. So
it's a really big school of thought now. It's called
time.
ACEs, so it's adverse childhood experiences.
Yeah.
And the more adverse childhood experiences you have as a child, you're more likely to have particular traits, you're more likely to be exposed to being in addiction. There's so much there, you know what I mean? And like it's so real, like Gabor Mate, he does great stuff about trauma. There's this amazing book called The Body Keeps the Score. So it's like, no matter how much you know what the right thing is to do, but the body keeps the score, so the chemicals start bouncing. You know, you get triggered or reminded of a scenario in your life and you can't control it. The body knows. It's kept it there, it's stored it there, and it's coming up and it's there. And trauma is not pretty. So, you know, when I see, like, people slate and say young men as being, like, you know, say in working class areas, like, you know, oh, they're just violent this, or they're just, and I'm like, no, hang on a minute, like, those kids have experienced massive trauma throughout the majority of their lives, and trauma doesn't look pretty, and trauma manifests itself in the world as something that we don't like to deal with. And sometimes that's anger, sometimes that's hitting out, sometimes that's meltdown, sometimes they're rages, and them negative behaviours are literally can be traced back to all the adverse childhood experiences that a young person has actually experienced. Do you know what I mean? Now, at some stage, you have to get to the point, and I think that's what point I've got to in the last few years, is I can keep blaming all those things that has happened to me. Like, I mean, I am when writing the book, I had to deal with the fact that I had been, trigger warning, I had been raped. So when I started talking about that, I had to really start to deal with all that in my head. Obviously the different violence, the different death, all those things. So when I would have like a really angry outburst, I would just go to, I'm really sorry for that. I'm just really, you know, I'm really messed up. I'm really my head's really wrecked. All these things have happened to me, and they're all true. They all exist. But at some stage, I have to take responsibility then in that, going, I can't change all those things, but what do I do now? And how do I fix this now? And how can I move forward now? So then you stop blaming people, but then show them how to take responsibility and keep working with them to take responsibility as to what happens next.
Yeah.
And I suppose that's the journey I feel that I took, is that I felt I had no control over all the external things that happened to me. But I had to get to the point where I went, no, I didn't have control over those things, but I need to make a choice now. And I need to figure out how to make that. And you can't make it alone. You make it because you have friends to support you, or you have a family support, or you have a therapist support, or, you know what I mean? Like, it's very hard to make it alone. And so many people are alone in trying to do that. Do you know what I mean? But all the systems need to be put in place to keep facilitating that.
There's going to be so many people listening to this who probably would be unaware that they're dealing with this trauma in them kind of outbursts, what you were saying, whether it is through violence or through addiction.
I feel like I can relate myself to a lot of it as well. And like, it's madness how much I can relate to what you're saying there in terms of that. And I know that is from, like, childhood trauma and stuff like that and things that you see growing up. And that's the way I've been now. That's why I'm looking to try and get help as well myself. You know what I mean? I'm not any special either. Like, we're all the same. I'm looking to get able to help myself, but that's so relatable. Like,
Yeah,
really
and it's a
home.
journey. You'll be doing it for the rest of your life, right? And I engage in therapy at different times in different ways because different stuff comes up at different times and your brain matures. So something that you thought you knew or figured out when you were 20, by the time you're 30, your brain has gone in a different direction and you have a little different bit of a perception. So you might need to go back and engage on a particular topic. So from 15, from having Jordan, even though I was still fucking up all over the place, I was still making at least one good decision at each of those moments to try and find my way out of that. Do you know what I mean? So I went on and developed addiction programs then for about 15 years in Tala, and I was really good at my job. I was really, really good at my job, but I used to lose my temper when not at the people I worked with because I could understand them the most. It was therapeutic for me too. And then I worked in the homeless sector. But when austerity, during the years of 2008, 2007, 8, when we went into an economic crash, and the addiction services that I knew were so vital and the work that I was doing was being attacked at a government level, I didn't know how to respond to that without like hurling abuse at, like, if a politician was in front of me or if a decision maker or if the HSC or a particular department was going, no, we need to make, and it's always the poor that need to fucking pay anyway, like, do you know what I mean? So, but I had no way to articulate the story of us, and I wanted to develop that. I wanted to keep me passion and me fight, but I also wanted to understand the language that the political class was using to keep us out of the conversation. So I was like, how do I still be me, but not let them keep me out of a conversation because I haven't got a fucking clue what they're saying. Do you know what I mean? So I was like, I need to understand that, because on an instinctual level and an emotional level, I understand what's going on here. But they're just trying to baffle me with words so that I feel like I don't belong in this conversation. So I decided to leave by 2011, after years of just, constant cuts to the community sector. I decided to take my 2 kids and myself and move back in with my parents. And I think I've always been lucky that I constantly had that support, which not everyone does. And I think that's why I try and tell my story so much, is because people can try and look and say, the headlines will say, like, single mother, ex-drug user, early school leaver, becomes senator. And it's like, oh yeah, like, lad, please fill in the gaps for people. Like, I had a lot of support, like, do you know what I mean? Because sometimes people can use you as a weapon against your own communities, if to say, well, she did it, so yous are all just lazy fucks. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? So I always try and fight against that and go, well, no, actually, I was never at risk of losing my home. I had a safe home. I had a roof over my head. There was no addiction or violence in my household. The basis and foundation in which I could reset into was pretty fucking solid, and not everybody has that. Yeah. So that allowed me, I suppose, to go to Trinity then, because my mum, I gave up my wage in the addiction sector and got into Trinity through the Access programme. So because I'd no leaving cert and stuff, there's an Access programme in Trinity that it takes on about 25 mature students a year and 25 young adults, and it really gets you ready academically to be much more able to begin a degree. So it'd be not only for people that left school early, but people say that have been out of education 10, 20, 30 years.
It's even available for people down the leaving cert. I was applicable for.
Yeah, yeah. So if you didn't just get even the points that you wanted, if you wanted to try and, So that's how I went into Trinity. And while I was there, my dad was quite unwell. He had dementia and Parkinson's and stuff. So like the first couple of years was me studying, but then kind of just going straight home into the family unit. So I didn't get to really be like your typical student. I was a mother of 2 kids and I had so much responsibilities. But when my dad died, in that year I got involved much more in Trinity. It sounds like I'm going, yay, Dad died, so much freedom. But he
Fuck's sake, Lynn.
no, he'd be glad, he'd be delighted. He didn't like Annie was having to look after him. But it allowed me to kind of explore a bit more. And I'm trying to kind of make sure I just give snippets to give a story rather than going into everything. So I ran for the president of the Students' Union at the time, which would have primarily been dominated by middle-class white men from private schools. And that would have been the historical kind of nature of the president of the Students' Union in Trinity. But there was an amazing guy called Donald McLachlan-Bourne, who's now a doctor, and he was the middle-class privileged boy from the private school, but met me and kept going, you need to run for president in the year after me. You need to run for president. He was like, the skills you have, everything you understand about community and about people, and and he kept planting it and planting it and planting it. And I ended up then running for the Students' Union. And then while I was there, then the Seanad became available. So a general election happens, and then 3 months later the Seanad kicks in. So the Dáil and the Seanad, for anyone I suppose that doesn't understand,
I was going to ask you to explain this.
They're checks and balances on each other. So every bill that goes through the Dáil has to go through 5 stages, and then it has to do the same in the Seanad. And the Seanad is there to scrutinise the legislation that goes through, and then it sends it back, and then it goes off to the President to be signed. So it's making sure that you don't end up with a government that's all one, say, big right-wing party, and nobody's checking. It's like a check on the other house. Now, in the Seanad, I can also table legislation, which I've done well at in terms of bills to like expunge people's convictions so that they can re-enter education and, clear their records. Now, that doesn't include like murder, rape, all of those things still exist outside that, but all your other usual kind of, minor crimes and
convictions.
Yeah, well, the drugs possession one keeps people out so much, it's ridiculous. But I have another bill that I brought when I first got elected so I'd be a big advocate of decriminalisation of drugs possession. So that people
touched on before as well.
So I do a huge amount of work on that. So when I ran for the Seanad again, it was the lads in the Students' Union who just didn't even have the same life as me in any shape or form, and I always appreciate that, because sometimes I think we can think that that there's always a divide between people, and that's not always true. And they really, pushed me into spaces, and really kind of, because I wouldn't have seen any of them spaces for me. I don't think I probably even knew what the Seanad was a year or two before I ran for it. I would have heard, but I wouldn't have known its purpose. Do you know what I mean? So I ran not thinking that I would get in, because statistically, we studied the statistics right back for decades, right? And Mary Robinson was the only other person to get in on our first run. And David Norris was the only other person to unseat an incumbent. So that means that they got rid of the person who was in it beforehand. So David Norris is nearly there 30 years. And then Mary Robinson obviously hasn't been there for a long time. And I was like, statistically, I've no chance. But I'm going to run because it means I can shape the debate. So it means that if I'm on a stage being questioned about why I'm running, if they're all talking about stuff that doesn't actually matter to many of people in my community, it means I can bring the conversation during debates like on Vincent Browne and all these spaces. I can then bring up something else, and it means that they have to respond then to a conversation that they've never had before, they wouldn't have had if I wasn't in the election. Like drugs, like poverty, like lack of education, or poor employment in working class communities.
And you're
all that
bringing
kind
their
of
opinion on that to the surface then.
So that was kind of my motive. And then I got elected.
And you're like, Bollox, what do I do here?
I was like, exactly. I was like, what the fuck do I do?
But like, you did get in, but obviously you had to have like some part in the back of your mind saying, right, I want to win, I'm gonna win. So you couldn't be unprepared.
Yeah, I was unprepared for, I suppose, what the job was, because I learn, I'm a practical learner. I'm not I don't learn by someone just telling me.
No, you learn on the job.
I learn on the job, and I'm good at that. So I'm good at doing things that I'm afraid of, or things that I know that I need to work at. I'm not afraid of that.
Kind of thing.
So I'm really good at just stepping into those spaces. And then my campaign manager, who was amazing, he had just graduated from Trinity, and then he just finished up with me like literally 3 weeks ago after being with me for 5 or 6 years. He was just absolutely brilliant. Like, he was such a political mind, like, just, really was he balanced me out, you know what I mean, where I'm impulsive, and you couldn't let me near the emails now in case I just wrote back and said to someone,
shut your mouth.
Do you know what I mean? But so he really balanced that out for me, and he really helped me step into that space and understand. And we're learning all the time, and I think some people think they're ready-made politicians, right? Or that they're just made for the job, or they don't even think about it at all. And I think there's something really not okay with that. Like, I don't like the idea of career politicians.
I hate it, Lynn.
Where they go in from school and this is their career. And it's like, politics is literally, right, at its most basic level. Alice Mary Higgins, she's a senator and the leader of the civil engagement group, which I'm in the Shannon, and she always explains politics as it's a set of people making decisions about how we can best live together.
I completely agree. I think a government should treat the country like a business, and its customers are the citizens. So how do you satisfy your customers?
Yeah.
And that's how it should be. But how the government is run now, it's a business to satisfy the stakeholders who are the people in government, and that's not how it works. And the thing about career politicians, I'm baffled by it. How can the Minister for Health never work in the health sector? You know, like that. You have people like, so your job was, you done your leaving cert, you studied politics, you're now in the government. You've no experience in the commercial sector, you've no experience in a boardroom, you don't know how decisions should be made or debated and stuff like that. So like, I think it's in Canada, if you go to their ministers, like the Minister for Education used to be a teacher, makes sense.
Yeah.
The Minister for Education was, or the Minister for Health was a doctor. That makes sense. And that's how I think it should be. Whereas you see now in the current government, like the Minister for Housing used to be a Minister for Health, and you're like, what's this? Like jobs for the boys, you know what I mean?
It is like it's there's some countries where the ministers are actually appointed from general society. They're not actually elected members.
Yeah.
But the ministers are actually appointed because they have a particular expertise, and they're actually taken from that
makes sense,
expertise.
doesn't it?
They're not actually just one of the party.
Yeah.
But so like for me, it's like, you know, when I went in there, I suppose I learned pretty quick that even I might not at that stage, like I might not have like this political language or this understanding of who the first president was and named, because that's what they pride. Some of them, it's like this political knowledge, right?
Well
But
done,
no-
you're an expert at history.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'd be great at a table quiz, not on a table in a fucking
That's
debate.
it. Do you know what I mean? So it's like people talking about people's lives in the abstract rather than actually bringing real life experience into that. And that's what the Shannon is supposed to do. It's they're vocational panels. So you're supposed, like the agriculture panel, the labour panel, the educational panel. So I'm on the Trinity panel. So Trinity graduates phone me in, which is funny as well, because obviously a lot of my work is so based on like poverty and human rights and all of that, and then, you know, Trinity is often seen as so elite, but I think it actually, and it is, but it matches me perfectly in the sense that they actually require very little of me. So you don't get many Trinity graduates that have voted for me, like emailing my office going, I wanted you to do this. They vote me in because obviously they see that there's a need for a particular voice working on particular things, and they're living their professional lives and they care about society. They're not necessarily affected by the stuff that I work on, but they just seem to support it. And I think that that's a positive
They see the
relationship
need for
somewhat.
you.
You know,
Yeah.
you know. So even though being in politics, every day is different and every day is hard, and I know my way around the place now. Obviously, I'm able to like draft legislation. I'm able to speak about legislation. I'm able to read Den's policy. But like that's just one tiny part of the puzzle. Like, do you know what I mean? There's obviously there's the public part of it. There's trying to bring people along. So say with the spent convictions legislation that I introduce in Ireland, you can only have one conviction spent, and it has to be after 7 years. You have any more than one, and they'll never be spent. They'll be on your conviction record forever.
So can we just break that down? So if, let's say, I get arrested for drink driving. I've never been arrested before.
No, well, I drink driving might, but driving offences are not on it.
All
Why?
right. Because they all have them.
It's
you
exactly
go.
what it is.
Is that what it is?
Well, yeah, like, I mean, think about it. What is
The most common drink driving penalty
driving?
points.
Yeah, driving offences.
Right, shoplifting then.
Yeah.
Yeah. I get caught shoplifting. Why are you laughing? I'm trying to think of an example. Yeah. So I'm 27, never been arrested before. I get caught shoplifting in the morning, and I get, I don't know, 6 months suspended sentence. I don't do anything during that suspended sentence. I now have a conviction for shoplifting. Is it after 7 years that's squashed? That's off the record, is it? But so when I'm 30, if I get caught shoplifting again, I now have 2 convictions. Will one never be spent?
So none. So once you've more than one. So now outside of that, you've done your conviction rate, right? But what I'm more concerned about is, like, you could be 19, right? Young lad from the inner city, right? Picks up 3 charges in a day.
Yeah, which is
you know,
very common.
Or someone in
It is
psychosis.
very common, yeah.
Someone experiencing psychosis, someone experiencing homelessness, someone in the depths of addiction, right? They could get fucking 6 charges on one outing,
Yeah.
right? That's it. Never. And then we try and tell them, but if you just do this and you just do this and you go to recovery and you go to meetings and you go back to education, and then it's like, no, none of that's true actually.
Yeah, you still have this weight carrying
Because
around,
if you fill out a Garda vetting form, say if you want to be a social worker, and we need working class people, we need people from, like, we need people of colour, we need working class people, we need travellers, we need society represented in all the
It
professions.
has to be diverse, yeah.
It has to be diverse,
Well,
right?
that's the thing about democracy. So
Yeah.
you can't. The thing I love about democracy over all other political ideologies is the fact that everybody gets the same say. I get one vote, you get one vote, Terence gets one vote. If you're over the age of 18, obviously, yeah, that's grand. But the thing that's misrepresented about democracy is that you have the same class of people representing other classes, which it shouldn't be. So I love the fact that you're a woman from a working class background mixing it with all these elite, male, white, wherever. But that's how it should be. You should have someone who can, right, Lynn, we have a problem here. What do you think it is? You give your view. The next person gives their view, and that's how a democracy should work.
It's only when you've experienced particular things in life can you see a piece of legislation and know that it's going to impact a particular community.
Exactly, because it relates to you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So like Senator Flynn, like Eileen Flynn, who's the first Irish traveller woman in the Shannon, like she knows when she reads legislation what is going to affect her community, right? No amount, like historically legislation has been written by middle class white men.
Yeah.
Academia has been written by middle class white men. So the system is set up to favour privileged white men. And it's only when you bring in diversity, and we've a lot of
Exactly.
work to do to undo that single lens of how the world should be. Same with the judiciary. Do you know what I mean? The same with like guards, the same with teachers. You know what I mean? Like with all of, if you need to change all of that. But you can think of all the amazing working class people in all these areas that have gone on, try to get, say they might have been in addiction or they might have been, had a bit of criminality in their background, but they decided they wanted to be a social worker and give back. No, they'll never be. Garda vetted, not suitable. Want to be a teacher? No, not suitable. Literally because of what's on your guard. So basically, you're punished in court, you'll go to prison or you serve your suspended sentence, and you think that that's your punishment. No, it is not.
Exactly.
You will be
That's what
excluded and filtered out of everything. And not only that, you could have been 20 doing a few things, right? And then say you're 35 and you're bringing your daughter to play GAR or somewhere or whatever, and you need to be Garda vetted to go on their trip. And you're then left in that embarrassing situation to have to tell
What
the
happened,
coach
yeah.
what happened to you
Yeah.
when you were 18.
Or
Like, come on, like.
a fairly common thing is people who do something stupid when they're teenagers and they turn their life around, they get a good job, they're managing a house, they're bringing their kids on a holiday to Disneyland. You're not getting
Yeah,
in there
not
because
getting
you have
in.
that conviction from when you were a teenager.
Yeah, or insurance. It affects insurance as well.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So literally we tell people that if they just do these things, they can integrate and rehabilitate, and it's not true.
Not the case, yeah.
So
It's just not true.
What was your bill then to change that?
I've worked my bill through the 5 stages of the Shannon, which is not easy as an opposition independent senator. It's no easy feat. It's taken me since 2018 to get it to the 5th stage. So I think what I do well as a politician is, instead of just tabling something and hoping they vote for it, I work for about a year or 2 years with the department that would be responsible for it, with civil servants, even though initially they might not agree with it. I carry out kind of like local research, international research. I bring in all the expertise, and I spend about a year or 2 trying to educate the people I need on side why this is important.
So it's data driven. You have the numbers to
Yeah,
back up why you're
and then I
bringing
have the NGOs in.
Yeah.
So like say the Irish Penal Reform Trust, like at some of my events people would speak that have past convictions but now have PhDs and can't get jobs.
Yeah.
So I try and make sure that all the right people are in the room so that people understand why this issue is important. So like for me, how I do politics is I try and take my time. Like I could just go in and table a bill and they vote against it, and then I go, oh my God, the government doesn't care about us, blah, blah, blah. I could do that, and for some reason people want to go, there's shame them.
Yeah.
But I don't feel that I can, like, that might be okay if you're in a party because you're trying to get into power.
Yeah.
But as an independent senator working on our own, I need to manoeuvre my way around to try and get people to understand
You'd
why
rather
this is
get it
important.
through than get it heard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
basically.
And what will your bill change then for spent convictions?
So at the moment, the way it's written now, hopefully it's not altered in the Dáil, but it will remove the cap of convictions that can be spent.
Yeah.
It will change the court. So right now, like it's like like domestic, so say it's your lower courts, and then your supreme, like, so it won't include like the highest of courts. So it changes the kind of which courts you've received your charge in. It will extend the amount of time. So at the minute, if you've served over 1 year, over 12 months in prison, it will never come off, even if it's only one. It stays there. So I'm extending. So I look to extend all those periods. So it's like there's a doubling of the time that you could have spent in prison to be eligible.
Get more extreme or crime.
It might not even be extreme.
Extremer.
You might have got 2 consecutive sentences ran into each other or something. Do you know what I mean? So there might be reasons why they might be minor convictions, but that you've done more than 12 months. Do you know what I mean? You might have got into trouble a few times as a kid, got a few JLOs, they think they're teaching you a lesson. Do you know what I mean? All that kind of stuff. So it's the way I want people to think is it's not about how many convictions that we have on our record, but it's about what we're trying to do now. So you're trying to flip people's thinking, going, yes, them convictions existed, yes, they're there, but this person is no longer offending. So we should be focused on the not offending, not the fact that there's convictions in the past. Do you know what I mean?
That conviction doesn't define who they are.
You're not the sum of your worst mistake.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? You're just not the sum of that. And you're not the sum of your circumstances that led you to receive a conviction. So many working class people would make amazing teachers, amazing social
100%.
workers, like and society, like people think we miss out from not being in those jobs. Society misses out from not having us in them. End of story.
We always say always, all the time.
We need more teachers who sound like us because we relate to them, we resonate with them more. And someone was only saying it to us recently, Terence, that we should go around the schools and talk, because there's young bloods who need to hear accents, because you can bring anyone in and like life skills are taught, but unless they're being taught by someone who you can relate to, it doesn't resonate with you.
Yeah, definitely.
Like people even try and correct my language for years. I think they've given up. Like, do you know what I mean? So, like, I could speak the most academic English right now, right? I don't want to. My dialect is important. So I've no interest in saying my mum. I'll continue to, when I'm talking to schools, it's me ma, it's me dad,
Same
it's
in
my
the
ma.
book as
Do you know,
well.
it's in the book. I refuse to change any of it. It's how I speak. It's how my mouth.
But that's why, like, even reading the book, like, you can
enjoy it
you
more.
can nearly hear it in the accent. You know what I mean? It's brilliant. Like.
And that's all done purposely, because it's like people think that for working class people to do well, that they're trying to escape working class culture, and that's not true. We should all be able to flourish within our own communities. We don't need to move from D1 to D4 as a sign of success. We should be able to be teachers and doctors and pilots and all still be as inner city and as Tallaght and as Ballymun as you like, and still have our accents, because culture is not only about your financial income. There's social capital, there's cultural capital, there's financial capital, and all of those things matter. So sometimes people think you're trying to escape your class. I've no interest in escaping who I am as a Tallaght woman. Do you know what I mean? I want to be who I am, but I want to work in there and try and make an impact. I'm not trying to escape anything. I'm not trying to leave Tallaght. Like, I live in me ma's, like, do you know what I mean? I'm not moving out as a form of protest.
So you're working class with upper class ambitions.
No, working class ambitions.
What did I say?
Because upper class
Ambition,
ambitions. No, they're working class ambitions. We've built this city on rock and roll. Do you know what I mean? It's like everyone has aspirations, no matter whether you're upper class, lower class, middle class, wherever you fall. Like, an underclass, right, is not a term I use. But a lot of the work I do, if you were to look at it sociologically, they would say underclass, so they've never worked, and some of their parents have never worked, and they've been in and out of prison, and there's intergenerational poverty and trauma and addiction, right? So working class is quite an umbrella term to try and capture people who live side by side in their communities. Do you know what I mean? But they still have the same aspirations as somebody that is from a really upper class family. The problem is realising those aspirations. So if your social floor, if your foundation isn't the same as everyone else's, so the way people talk about we all have the same opportunities.
No, we don't.
We don't.
It's far from it, yeah.
So just by saying Trinity exists and you can go there, doesn't magically make people even know where the fuck the building is. Do you know what I mean? Because it's so it's like it's about equality of environment. So all our environments need to mimic each other, and then we can engage in opportunity. Do you know what I mean? Like, does that make sense?
No,
So
I
it's
get
like
you.
Yeah, no, it does make sense, yeah.
we need to be safe, and we need to have our basic needs met, and then everything else can step up off of that. Do you know what I mean?
And I think sometimes there is that bit there, like the access program is there, the Trinity access program. So that kind of is there for people of similar backgrounds to me and yourself, to give them, right, you may have had a bit of a late start, or you may need a bit of a boost, and here it is. Sure, I got into college on the hair scheme. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't get enough points, but I qualified. It's what I call it the advantages of being disadvantaged. Qualified because where I come from.
Yeah.
And I think if you look back statistically, there's not many people in my area with degrees, and I am a beneficiary of that scheme. So it's in their favour.
But it's only when you're not the exception have we achieved anything. We can't ever point to the exception of the rule. So people point to me as an exception, but that doesn't change or address poverty and why I'm the one that they can point to. Do you know what I mean? So one person can achieve and do well, but it's only when we all can achieve and do well have we reached like a fairer concept of what society is.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I get you.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I do.
Am I losing you?
No. Well, which
I'm lost hours ago. No, I'm not enjoying it. I know what you're saying.
So
yeah,
it's not good enough for one of us to do well. We all need to do well.
Yeah, definitely.
Or be able to do well.
Yeah.
You
That's
know,
what I
'cause
mean.
It comes down to the individual then. There's no point in saying, like, right, there you go, there's your opportunity there, but if Terence fails and I succeed, then the whole thing is fucked. No,
Yeah.
it's not really. It's down to the
Yeah.
individual.
But there
then.
should be another opportunity for Terence and another opportunity.
Oh, no,
and another-
definitely.
So it's like you just
find
keep
something that
creating-
keeps going.
You keep
Yeah.
creating the
Yeah.
pathways.
Yeah, but I know what you mean by that.
Yeah.
So the spent convictions bill, I love the idea of it. I never knew it was 7 years and then one conviction can only have one, because it is fairly common. You often hear somebody, they'll get arrested for shoplifting and then what are they charged on? Resist and arrest.
Yeah.
This,
There's
that, and the other.
loads that goes with it. I know people who get 6, 7, 8 convictions on
Yeah.
a night out.
Yeah.
You're like, what?
But like, they'll only do one thing.
Yeah,
And it's
yeah.
just, it's usually in the judicial system's best interest to try and charge them with multiple things, because if one fails, you'll catch someone on something else.
Yeah.
So the system is stacked against you there. So it's very rare you hear someone has one conviction.
Yeah.
So like, you know, people talk about they want to reduce the amount of times people keep going back to prison. So if like governments and departments and people actually believe that they want people to not go back to prison, well then you make sure that you don't put barriers in front of them.
Exactly, yeah.
Because if you're going to lash them over with a load of convictions that will never come off the thing, that doesn't feel like an incentive to not
No.
involve yourself in crime. That feels like an incentive to continue in crime because you've no
Exactly,
other option.
100%.
And you're judging a person based off their action, not their reaction,
Yeah.
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is what they should be doing.
Yeah.
Because we keep
Yeah.
reverting back
We
to...
spoke about it a couple of weeks ago, saying like we know lads who are bleeding, run amok through their teen years into their adult years, and then they have a child and they settle down. They look complete like that.
Yeah.
You're two
They're not the same
completely
person.
different human beings. Like
Yeah.
like they're completely different. And then if they carry that conviction over, like that does need change.
They were
That's
Anto
mad.
growing up, now they're Anthony with 2 kids. Basically.
Literally, yeah. But yeah. that's it. But that's why we love you as well, Lynn. You know, because the first time I met Lynn, she gave me the book and a couple of other books as well. And then I was talking to her, and you were saying like, you go in there with your short sleeve top, your tattoos and your
sleeve,
scar in
yeah.
your face, and you're just there representing the working class, and it's brilliant.
And a
you know
key
what I
bag
mean?
chain.
A key bag chain. You know what I mean? It's unbelievable. We love it.
But another bill that you put through, or you're putting through, was the drug one.
Yeah, drug decriminalisation. So that would have been my first bill, and then we stalled it because they carried out like a public kind of consultation where people could submit, the general population could submit to it. It was the largest ever consultation submitted to in the history of the state. It was like 20-something thousand, or just under 20,000 submissions, and it was overwhelmingly that we should decriminalise drugs for personal possession.
It's actually... Do you find... Right, I don't want to take away from the decriminalisation part, but do you find that... Well, it's like a Stone Age thing that we're dealing with in politics in Ireland. Like, a few weeks ago you mentioned us in the Senate, and you couldn't actually say the name. You opened it with... I was listening to a podcast on the way in here by two inner city lads, rather than just saying I was listening to the Talking Bollox podcast,
Yeah.
because they would have stopped you, and you're only given a certain amount of time to talk, and they would have stopped you to correct you about that.
Yeah.
Like the word bollocks, you know, like are we actually, it's 2021, are we actually going to get hung up on someone mentioning the word bollocks
Yeah.
in a setting like that?
And chastising them nearly. Do
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
I'd be on meetings with
Now
people.
maybe it would have went over their heads, but like
But
you didn't want to
Austin
chance
has-
it.
With the chance that it didn't,
Yeah,
though.
yeah. Do you know what I mean? So like there is kind of archaic, like it's like, do you know? But like politics is always way behind society, like, do you know what I mean? Like, society does have to drag the political kind of state into the 24th century. Do you know what I mean? Same with the education system. Like, we have a 19th century education system and we're in the 24th century. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, we're always dragging them. It's always archaic. Even, you know, like, none of them might not bat an eyelid if I say bollocks outside of the chamber, but it's like, it's written into the transcript. So there's really funny things, right, written into the transcript that I constantly drop in, right? So one time we were talking about period poverty, right? So so the idea that like sanitary products are so expensive, so like for a woman to be able to, it's just like for literally a bodily function that she can't control. So there's so many people that actually can't go to school because they can't afford them, so they stay at home and their kids and teenagers. So there's all this stuff and trying to increase awareness around period poverty. So on the debate on that, I was like, I said to the assistant, I'm going to try and drop in as many working class words for periods in this conversation, just so it's on the official transcript of the state forever. So
Say flowers.
I said me flowers.
Yeah.
Right? Zingers.
It's the most common. That's the most common term for
I said me flowers. I said the Reds are playing at home.
I never heard that one. I never heard that one.
I said the commies are in the garden.
Makes sense. Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, so we were like dropping them in.
The painters are in.
The painters are in. Me yolks.
I get you. I get it.
So like just dropping them in. So sometimes I like to amuse myself a little bit like that when I'm in there.
But that's what I'm saying. Don't take it as serious. But like,
Yeah.
I think if the fact that you couldn't say the word bollocks, and I was like, oh, come on, like, happy day. But thanks for plugging us. And anyway, so much will be out for that sponsorship. But no, like, and so you end up getting the feedback from the public, over 20,000 people.
Yeah.
How did that go down?
It went very well, but then they had a working group to assess it, and they really ignored the evidence, both domestically and then internationally. And they went, which they'll pilot soon, like a pilot program where the first time you're arrested or caught with drugs, you'll receive like a warning, or if you're in addiction and you need support, you might be, you know, directed towards like a health approach or account, you know, your local service or whatever. And then the second time you're caught, you'll either be arrested or given an adult caution, and then the third, that's it, right? Which again, who does it serve?
The system.
Yeah.
The judicial system.
It's classist, right? Because the people I care about are the people who are caught up in addiction and who have police on the streets every day, right? So a young lad in Jobstown has a 50 bag of weed in his pocket every day. A young lad from D6 has a 50 bag of weed in his pocket every day. Who's most likely to encounter a guard several times in their day, driving in and out of their estates, being stopped and searched because of how they look, what they're wearing, have their hood up, all of that, right? So if you're the young lad that only has to encounter a guard at a festival, or because he's ended up on a busy street on a night out in South William Street and he's caught, right? You're going to benefit from that law because you'll be given like a caution, or you'll be sent to a health ed approach. But if you're a working class person, or you're someone caught up addiction, or you're someone in homelessness, the likelihood of you getting caught more than the once. So on the first time it's a health issue, on the second time it's a criminal issue. Yeah. That doesn't make any sense.
No. And we had Philly McMahon on, and Philly McMahon said it to us, no guard has ever stopped somebody from taking drugs. Like if you, whatever the drug may be, if you have it on you and the police catch it, that doesn't stop anyone from taking it again.
No, prohibition hasn't worked. We literally keep supporting a system of criminalising. And you know what? You're not only criminalising people in addiction, you're criminalising poverty, you're criminalising marginalisation, you're criminalising people who are more likely to have the law slammed down on them.
Even that, you're criminalising human nature.
Totally.
Everybody needs an escape.
Yeah.
Everybody. And you're talking from someone who doesn't drink or do drugs. I do stuff to get a rush out of other things, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, I will never be caught with drugs because I don't do them, and I'm in favour of this. So I don't.
Well, most
I don't
people
understand.
are. Most people get it. It makes perfect sense. Do you know what I mean?
You know,
That's because of where we're from as well, though. We know that.
No, but there's a huge public behind us beyond where we're from.
Yeah.
You know, that has.
It just makes sense,
massive
though.
It does make sense.
Literally just makes
But
sense.
it makes me skin crawl. Do you ever see when politicians are trying to sound relatable and they're like, oh, yeah, I smoked weed when I was a teenager.
Shut up, you dope, you.
Get over it, like, you know, and they're so hesitant about it. And they're like, oh, yeah, I did it once. I guarantee you're probably doing Hoover.
100 you met in the Jack's little belt.
In the pub in the Dáil, down the Jacks. What's the
Now,
story?
lads, don't be giving out about the Dáil bar, because I know as soon as it opens, right?
It's still open.
It's not still open.
I seen the thing the other day that said it's been open privately.
It hasn't been open at all.
That's,
So don't.
I seen a thing.
Yeah, a thing online from someone called what?
John of them, the flat.
No, the pub hasn't been open, or the members' restaurant, or even the canteen. None of it's been open. So don't slag off the Dáil bar, because I know when it opens back up, you'll be only delighted to come in and sit with me in the Dáil bar for a good L.
100 you meant
For a
to
good L
put the
knows.
3-piece on.
No, you wear your fucking tracksuit and your runner's end of story.
fucking
All I
right,
know
John.
is the bill will be wiped off anyways, because the bill's constantly getting wiped off in that Dáil bar. Fucking cunts.
I wish.
Oh,
I
yeah,
don't,
good concept.
I don't know who's getting their bills wiped, but it's not me.
Who's always coming out then that
I think
they had an outstanding bill and it was wiped off?
I think years ago you used to be able to work up a tab. Now, I can be corrected on this, right? So I think years ago you used to be able to work up a tab. So say you were elected and you say, put it on my tab, and then like the bar would send you the tab, say like, you know, and say you've a tab there. Like, I don't know whether there was a time frame on it, 6 months or a year. And they'd say, yeah, deal with it. I think what happened was, you know, every term there'd be a load of politicians that didn't clear their tab, and then they weren't re-elected and stuff, and they never bothered the bollocks. So that's, you know what I mean? So
That dead right.
Yeah, and neck like a jockey's bollocks. They're on 70 grand a bleeding, and then they have probably 5 grand a month
don't
worth of
get me
expenses.
but I
elected.
think they
Fuck
don't
the
allow
pub.
tabs anymore. So,
Yeah, and they're dead right. I wouldn't
Yeah.
allow a tab if
Yeah.
no one was paying it.
Yeah.
Are you going to give a load of stuff out on pick if you know you're not going to get paid?
Bollocks.
Yeah.
They're ruining it for the next person.
How the rich stay rich,
Are they
bro.
but come here, they have 5 grand worth of expenses that are allowed expense a month, right? So that's 60 grand a year on top of a 70 grand a year salary, and they can't pay a couple of £100 for our fucking tab.
yeah, it's ridiculous. And
Miserable.
And that's the thing, it paints, because once you hear politicians, everyone just gets thrown into that. So you're just guilty by association for being a politician. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like the good thing about, like, I do love bringing, like I loved the kind of just bringing my family in or bringing my friends in, for the novelty of it. Do you know what I mean?
I was there.
Like,
When they remember they only opened it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Opened it. What was it? Many years ago did they open it to the public?
I don't know.
We went in and done a tour and all. And I was
Yeah.
like, couldn't give a bollocks to be honest with you. Like,
yeah, but I loved bringing them in for dinner in the members' restaurant, right? Now I'm sure that half a Tala has like a Rocktas bleeding plates and cups gone home with a handbag, like, do you know what I mean? But sure, look,
Yeah, dead right.
an whole China set with the hearts in the kitchen press.
the good plates only took out at Christmas.
But I love when my two worlds collide in a sense, right?
Yeah.
So I remember bringing all my friends in, and one of my pals, I won't say her name, she'll kill me, right? But I remember she went out for a smoke and she comes back with one of the ushers and she was like, this is so-and-so. I don't know what kind of nickname she gave him. He used to be a guard in Kilmainham. He fucking arrested me about 3 times, and I'm like sitting there. It's like, love it.
not what you mean.
No, I wasn't. I just laughed my fucking head off. I just like, same at my book launch, like, do you know what I mean? Like, because there's so many good people from all walks of life, right? And when you get to, like, at my book launch, Joe Mann from Killinard, a friend of mine, he runs Sacred Heart Football Club and stuff. He's a traveller man, and he
Hughie's cousin.
he would be his uncle.
Is
I'd
Hughie's
say.
uncle?
Yeah. So they bust in like half a Tala on their coaches into my book launch in Trinity. And I looked out into the thing, and Vincent Brown is interviewing me for the lunch, right? And there's 400 people invited, like, got tickets to come. Like, I couldn't believe it. But there's just all the lads at the back.
Yeah.
Like, they were in the cinema with their feet up like this, do you know, laughing their heads off, do you know what I mean? And then just like the ex-attorney general, or like the head of Trinity, or the head of the NTMA, and these two worlds just colliding, and ultimately that's my dream.
But the thing about it is we all live in the same world.
Exactly. But in my, like, you know, like, it's like I feel sometimes like I'm juggling 2 spaces, do you know what I mean? And at one stage, one of them are going to reject me. I just hope it's not me working class one. I don't mind if they reject me eventually. Do you know what I mean? But it's like, but I love when it comes together, because I do think the more we can find them common grounds, the more we can achieve as a society. And I might be naive, or maybe I might be a bit aspirational, but I think it's probably why I don't attack politicians lots and stuff, and the stuff that I do.
I don't think it's naivety.
Because I want to bring people along on the same journey, even if there's things I don't agree with what they're saying. Do
But
you know
isn't
what I mean?
that how we learn more? Because we're going to learn something from each other no matter what.
Exactly.
So there's a lot to be taught, and that's the thing about diversity. And democracy. That's why it works.
Yeah.
But what we talking about decriminalisation there. So what happened with that bill?
So that bill is still on the standing order. Like, I could still table it again, but like I need to get a new momentum behind it, and I need to kind of, sometimes I have to wait to the right time. Do you know what I mean? So they'll probably trial and pilot this program, but we're kind of, I'm kind of involved with a global network of people working on this, which I feel so lucky to be part of. Like everyone, like from America, from Portugal, from
I was going to say
from everywhere.
Like Portugal's they're on the pedestal. We want to be them.
To get really like technical, the reason why they say we can't do the Portugal one is because Portugal have a thing called civil law and we have a thing called common law, which means that we can't give civil powers to like guards to make these civil decisions on that very basic level, which I completely disagree with, because if that's the case, then we wouldn't be able to do so much stop and search. So I just don't think they want to give up their stop and search powers and stuff.
Yeah.
So there's like arguments about Portuguese legal system compared to our legal system. But my hope is that when they introduce this one where you can you're caught once and you're given somewhere, I'm hoping they see that the world doesn't fall apart by introducing that, and then I can push them a little bit further and a little bit further.
It's weird because drugs aren't exclusive. They don't care what colour, religion, race or creed you are.
No.
Or where you went to school or what job you have. You know, like you'll find drugs in every background.
Yeah.
So it's common.
Yeah.
Like amongst everybody. So I don't understand why the system is against it.
Because they'll start to then differentiate between what type of drugs are okay and what types aren't. And some drugs are primarily used in a self-medication way in working class communities, like crack, like heroin, that them drugs do discriminate.
And do you think you're opening up a Pandora's box then to like a health system issue?
I want to remove, like mine is for all possession of any drug. It doesn't matter what the fucking drug is.
What the class is.
Where when you bring in the conversation then when you're talking about it doesn't know any postcodes, drugs is literally everywhere. But then they'd only want to start legalising cocaine and weed because that's what they mostly, you know what I mean? So it's like different types of drugs seem to have different types of effects on what they do and don't
different
want to
attitudes,
do.
Essentially,
Yeah.
Because then I suppose you're looking at heroin. Heroin is more of a health crisis than a criminal crisis.
Public health crisis,
like if someone's caught with heroin, they shouldn't be locked up. They should be sent somewhere.
Rehab centre.
Exactly.
And even when some people that work in drug sectors come out against drug decriminalisation, baffles the hell out of me, because I'm basically looking at them going, so are you that bad at your job that you want a judge to deal with the person that you should be actually working with? Like, are you actually saying that? Like, how does that make sense if you're a drugs worker or you're a psychotherapist? Or why would you want somebody that needs your support to be in front of a judge? And then you need to get really integrate that, because you have to get behind what is behind that actually. You know, is it a class thing? Is it a stigma thing? You know, a judgment thing.
And it's a weird one because if we talked about Portugal and how they did it with their system, but if you look at the US and how they're thriving, they're profiting off it. They've turned drugs into a business. And the profits are going through the roof. So there's places in Colorado now. I know they're still a bit behind with some of their legislation because some of the marijuana places in Colorado, the distilleries, there's some law. It's technically still not legal. So how they lodge money into a bank has to be in cash.
It's about federal and domestic law.
So how they lodge has to be through cash. But like they have rooms, so that they're old stock rooms, and now there's full of cash because how they have to lodge it. Yeah. And you see how much money that.
My dream would be though, right? So say in some of those American states it's the black community that have been absolutely destroyed, fucked into prison, slavery by another name, you know, for drug use, for selling marijuana, for smoking marijuana, and then you take that trade away from communities that have literally relied on it. We should be working people that sell drugs into legitimate industry, because the entrepreneurial skills are there, the marketing skills are there, the research, like they're the biggest entrepreneur. Like the drugs market in an illegal market corrects itself very fucking quickly, right? Which means it's a functioning market. So no matter how many times you go in and raid a house and take a load of drugs out, stop pretending like it's making an impact.
No,
it's not.
It's not.
You know, and when they stand on front of the table, you know, with all the drugs on it, it reminds me. It reminds me of like a hunter, you know, with a deer or something, and it's like, what is the point in that? Why would you do that? It has no impact whatsoever. And the London School of Economics, the drugs policy kind of work that happens there, Dr. John Collins and a few others do amazing stuff. He's an Irish guy, does amazing stuff on drug decrim. They have literally done research on the economics of the drug trade and how it corrects itself. But then the state decides to legalise and become the legal drug dealers, but don't give an amnesty to all the drug dealers that were selling the same drug that you're now saying you're all right to sell. So drug dealers should get a fucking clean slate when you legalise.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or you should be finding ways now, unless obviously like they're locked up for murder or something. Do you know what I mean?
no,
But like
definitely, yeah.
on a local level.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Now that's like, I remember being at a talk with Richard Branson, right? And he was like going on and on about being an entrepreneur, and he was like
Going into space there the other day as well. Did you see that? Do you know what Richard Branson is?
No.
The fella who owns Virgin. He went into space the other day. Literally, I think it was Saturday. He was in space. He was actually in. He flew himself to space.
Ego shite. Look,
Doesn't matter. He's a legend. He's a
Look
billionaire.
at-
If I was a
No,
billionaire,
it's-
that's how I'd spend my
it's
money.
not,
I'd be going
it's-
to space.
It's look at the size of me spaceship. It's ridiculous. No,
And he's at the peak,
there's
Elon
better-
Musk.
There's better things he could be doing with his money, like solving poverty.
Come here, I'm sure he's very. He has big
But the thing is,
philanthropy.
but like a thing I said to him, what happens to drug dealers? If we legalise drugs, which I'm for, like, but if we legalise drugs, what happens to drug dealers locally? They don't just give up crime, like they don't just like some people don't have anything on their CV. They've been selling drugs from when they were fucking 11 till they're 30. So
I
you're
know
not going to
someone-
employ them, like.
I know someone who sells weed, and I said to him, "What would you do if they legalised weed?" He said, "I'd sell coke."
There you go. Like
It's all the cunts know, though.
It's
yeah,
exactly.
it is.
So you're just changing the market. You'll change. Like I remember now. This is just a theory, right? So I might be wrong, but when I was when the economic crash happened, right, and cocaine use reduced massively because of the amount of money in the country, and people started switching back to like 5 or E's, like, do you know what I mean? So it's like people were
Five for
going.
the score.
So people were switching back like to cheap drug use. Do you know what I mean? But obviously the if you noticed at the same time, right, now I would really like to commission a research piece on this, but I'm going to stand over for now, like as a hot take, right? But so at the same time as we had an economic crash, those drug dealers that set themselves out as a hierarchy, so they only wanted to deal in cocaine or other recreational drugs. They didn't want to be heroin dealers because there was like, I sell this, I'm not that. So there's some people that have self-imposed like kind of
Morals.
something on themselves. They're
yeah.
going, I do sell drugs, but I'm not into heroin dealing, blah blah blah.
We were only talking about that. Sorry for cutting across you. Remember, we were only talking about people who sell heroin. That
Yeah.
like, there'll be people out there they'd sell anything, but they'd be like, "Oh no, I wouldn't sell gear."
Yeah.
They won't sell heroin.
So
Yeah,
that,
it's
like, and
madness,
that, but then look at the amount of people, right, at the exact same time in the drugs market are start selling the Chinese Slimming tablets, the Juicy Couture handbags, and the fucking fake fat. Like, there's literally a moment where I was impressed, going, I think the drug dealers are diversifying their market, and they've gone off into fucking tea whiteners,
Yeah.
fucking Slimming like there was like all of a sudden a mix of things you could buy, like, you know what I mean?
Trevor Francis tracksuits. Well, no, there's so many people I know, and some of them are bogey or whatever. But if you could put them, they are entrepreneurial. Like if you put them in charge of a business, you know that business will thrive. You'd know it, and that's what I think.
Yeah. I agree 100%.
You would, you know. And imagine they did legalise it. Let's just say weed became legal next Monday. That's if I ran a weed business. That's who I'd be employing.
Yeah, me too.
You know what to do. You know what's good. You know what weights. You know who to sell to. You know where your demographic is. They could tell you where
But
to
then
open.
you're also then opening up the idea that we want to give people opportunities to exit crime.
Yeah.
So you're looking, the benefit in my head is, how do we help people exit crime? We give them an amnesty on any drug charges that they once had. You know, we try and, like, it's obviously all pie in the sky stuff that
No,
we're talking
definitely.
about.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
very, it's very aspirational.
It's not going to be fixed at the stroke of a pen.
No, like, do you know what I mean? But I think they're conversations we should definitely be having.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And even if it comes down to the fact that you put in, I don't know, like this legislation and there's this kind of policy in play and people have to be assessed and be like, all right, Lynn, you were caught with so much stuff, but you didn't do anything else, so you actually fit this. Yeah, you can apply for this. But Terence, no, you were acting the bollocks, doing other stuff, you can't apply for that, so your convictions don't just fall apart, but yours do.
Yeah.
And even that's a start.
It's progress.
It's a start,
Yeah.
You know,
Definitely.
and I really, it baffles me because you know quite well this government is greedy. You know quite well they don't have the best interests of the people, and they just want to make the profit.
But the Richard Branson point, right? He said, I asked him about I wanted to try and ask him about the wider societal question on it. And he turned around and he said, oh, well, what fucking CD place did he own? He owned
Virgin.
Virgin CDs, right?
Yeah.
When Virgin closed down, I set up blah blah, say it was fucking Virgin Airways or something. And I was like, are you really comparing lads living in poverty in a working class community? You think they're going to set up fucking Tala bleeding trains? Like,
you think they have that equity there to be like, well, that business didn't work, I'll bankrupt that and I'll open this
do you
instead.
know what I mean? It's like he just didn't get it. His entrepreneurial stuff was still just caught in the legal framework, because the legalisation of drugs benefit the privileged as well, because they will make money off them. They will be the ones that invest in it, but they also invest positively as well. Like in Oregon, talking about Colorado and stuff, where they've moved towards the likes of legalising psilocybin and in terms of mushrooms, and using psilocybin in a therapeutic setting to help people kind of deal with trauma and stuff. So sometimes it's like we end up relying on the big investors that have lots of money that will benefit from it, but then in another sense they're also the ones sometimes investing heavily in the research and the science to push it. So you're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place in terms of who does what. Like,
I think there was something in the UK there a couple of years ago for people coming out of the military suffering with PTSD, and there was a study with them and MDMA and how MDMA can combat PTSD. And like, see, something like that would never come unless it was decriminalised. You know, and I just don't get it.
There's already a loophole saying so Ireland took its Drugs Act directly from the UK and from the 60s. So we literally just, Ireland has those loads of, because they're a common law country as well. So a lot of the stuff comes directly, or did way back when. And within that, there is a loophole where drugs becomes legal for research purposes. So in Ireland we can actually carry out, so they started looking into like psilocybin treatment and stuff in Ireland and carrying out the research and kind of getting public engagement and attitudes on it. So I do think Ireland is starting to move towards that conversation as well, to actually, not in terms of MDA therapy, but in terms of psilocybin, and eventually then somebody will do an MDMA study as well, like, do you know what I mean?
No, I don't think we're a million miles away, but I think what, as you said, society pulls politics through, and as a society,
spoke about it anyways. That's all. Do you know what I mean?
Just before we finish up, Lynn, we had a conversation about politics a few weeks ago. I think it was with Willow Wall, and we were talking about how in the Dáil and in government, there's no one really there that sounds like us, and the fact that in my constituency, anyways, it was one of the lowest turnout in the whole country, and like I'm so proud to be from where I'm from, but in that conversation, I had to hang my head and be like, look, there's nothing I can do about that. The writing's on the wall. We had a bad turnout. But I think it's the likes of yourself, when you show people, like, this is who I am. And as Taryn said, you go in, you have a sleeve tattoo, you live at home, you don't give a bollocks, you have a key bag chain, you open up politics as an option for people to go into. And when I look at the people who are running in my constituency, I don't know who they are. I don't know who they are. I don't know who they are personally. And I know people who are like, oh, I'm from where you're from. I grew up in these streets. You don't sound like me. You don't dress like me. And you don't make the decisions that you promised you'd make for me when they do get in. And I think that's what you do. You break that down and you show people, like, here I am. I'm at the doing it. Why don't you? And I think when you see a face like you running, you change the conversation then, where people will be like, do you know what, I'm actually gonna go and vote this time. Because I want to make sure Lynn, the likes of Lynn, gets in. Or I want to make sure she stays in. You know, things like that. Do you ever think of running for the Dáil?
You see, the only reason why I don't run for the Dáil is I think it might give me less freedom to work on the big national issues that I do, because you do get very, bogged down in the local issues and people having particular, wants and needs from you. Do you know what I mean? So even though I do respond to them sometimes, I'm not bound by a geographical space trying to push me in a particular direction. You know what I mean? So I get to work on the big stuff, like the different campaigns that I work on, like the drug stuff, like the spend conviction stuff. And I get to really think about them and engage in them. And I do worry if that would get a bit lost if it was just too geographical. Do you know what I mean? Because then right now, I don't, Trinity graduates don't really put any pressure or any influence on what I do. And I think that gives me a huge amount of freedom. And I don't know how well I would respond to feeling less free in a constituency,
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Now, I wouldn't, at the end of the day, I'll always put myself where I feel I'm going to have the most effect. If I stop feeling like I'm having any sort of effect and the Dáil will give me, a greater platform, I think I've actually done well with my Shannon platform. in terms of making sure like my voice is heard and I stay on point on the things that I care about. But like I don't necessarily know if I'll always stay in politics either, because the things I care, if you look at it, it's a thread of my life. I went from being a drug user to want to decriminalise drugs. I went from being a criminal to wanting to remove convictions. Do you know what I mean? So, and working in addiction. So my life has literally been a thread to this point.
Yeah,
so
kind of both sides really.
Yeah, I'll follow that wherever I feel I can have the most impact. And that might not necessarily always be in the political space either.
And I think that shows how genuine you are. And, like, she's salt of the earth. You know, so many people that like, I'm here to change, and they go councillor, TD. The second Europe opens up, they're jumping at it. They're like, well, you've done fuck all as a councillor, you've done fuck all as a TD. You can clearly, you're going where the money is, and you can see that by what you said there, you know quite well where your intentions lie.
Thank you.
And that's
This
nice
was
to
a
hear.
proper little school day for me. And anyways, you didn't say a whisper, but I loved it. I absolutely loved that conversation. I literally feel like I'm just a listener now, because you didn't say a word, but that was brilliant, honestly. It's great to hear that all stripped back from someone like yourself. You know?
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. You're making it relatable.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you're making. I hope there's someone out there that'll look at it and like, do you know what? Politics isn't that daunting. It is easier to understand than I
Look
thought.
at her background, look where she came from, and look where she
they
is.
might say, Jesus, I might actually now turn around and I might run the next election or whatever, or I might just even register to vote.
Yeah.
Because that's the biggest thing you can do.
It's the biggest thing you can do. It's why we should reduce the age to 16, so we register
think so?
people while they're in school. Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah, well, look.
You can test it out on the local elections and the European elections. You don't need a constitutional change. So me and Fintan Moorfield, he's a young Sinn Féin senator. He's only in his like mid-20s, quite cool and really, really good. And the two of us introduced the bill together to lower the voting age to 16 in the locals and the Europeans, which means that you begin to civically engage people while they're still in school before they've left school. So you get them registered, and you know what I mean? Yeah.
The only problem I'd have with that hesitation is the fact I think back to myself when I was 16. I look at 16-year-olds now.
Uneducated.
Well,
Is that what
I
you're
wouldn't
gonna
say uneducated. I'd say, I don't know, inexperienced.
Yeah.
Is the word I'd use.
But
because
look how adults vote now.
True.
Look at the political system we have.
True, but I think you have more responsibility on your shoulders. If someone, like you go back, if somebody commits a crime at 30 and someone commits a crime at 16, do they deserve the same punishment? I don't think so, because one is
You
inexperienced in life.
But you can't ever compare, like, say, so some people make arguments like, oh, there's a reason why you can't smoke until you're 18, or buy smokes, or buy drink. And it's like, you can't compare something that's negative for your health to something that's positive for your health. So engaging in democracy should be sold as a positive thing. And I had a young working class lad in doing his work experience with me for a year. He developed all the research around my vote at 16. He developed the survey. He surveyed all the different desk schools in the working classes areas. We pulled together everything. And you want to see the knowledge that exists there on the climate, on housing, on everything.
Yeah.
And no matter what way they vote, if a whole community in Jobstown and Killinarden and Cushlan tomorrow voted for Fine Gael, do you think Fine Gael would still look like Fine Gael? Or do you think they would have to drag themselves, because then all of a sudden you're a threat to their power?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So it doesn't matter sometimes. Like, what matters is getting a whole community to vote. Then they can't ignore you. So even if you end up with a government that you don't agree with, they now know that you're motivated to vote.
Yeah.
So they have to consider that then in what they do. You know.
I just think 16, you're very easily manipulated, and I just think I think 18 is a grand age, because you still have people in
There's
school.
enough of a difference between
there's
18
not.
and 16.
There's not. It's
To
arbitrary.
be like, oh, you can be manipulated at 16, but at 18 you have a head on your shoulders just because you're an adult.
You definitely don't just click overnight.
Yeah.
But those 2 years can be a big
I'd say
difference,
if you were
because
saying going from 21 to 16, I'd say, right, that's, but 18 to 16, you're talking 24 months here, I think.
I agree with what you're saying, but I think there's enough introduced to you responsibility wise. So when you turn 17, you can then drive. You turn 18, then you can earn a lot more money when you're working. You know, there's a jump in the pay
I
pay
get
scale
you.
and stuff like that. So that's just, I don't want to get into an argument of should the age be lowered, but
Yeah, that was an unbelievable chat. It was great just sit here and listen to the two of you. But it was unbelievable. Thanks very much for coming in today, Lynn.
yeah. Last question, Lynn. We left it for a few weeks. We brought it back last week. I think I'm going to know the answer to this based off what you said earlier, but do you piss in the shower?
Of course, I piss in the shower.
Well, there you go.
And the
That's a
swimming
wrap.
pool, and the sea.
I never gone to the bats for hole. Jamie, take us out.
Boom!
Subscribe to this podcast for free on the Go Loud app.
What you waiting for? Put your back in it. just a little more. Throw your weight in it now. Tell your body you're ten. Walk it hard and long. When you finish that,
Tehep na ka.
go down, go down, go down.